The main character, addressing the reader, says that there are many toys in this world. Someone's prayer is heard, which prevents him from speaking. The man in armor, holding a sword in his hand, finished the prayer and said, "Amen." Frowning, he told the demon that he was bringing retribution on him in the name of God. The main character said that one toy was too noisy and he would finish the thought when he dealt with it. The knight lay on the floor with his arms and legs torn off. The main character said that he sent him to his father's, so he can now praise him as much as he wants. A sound caught his attention. An elderly man entered the room holding a coat in his hand. Looking at his watch, he said that it looked like he didn't have much time. Frowning his scarred and wrinkled face, he took out his sword and said that today was their wedding anniversary, and, unfortunately, they had to hurry up with it. The main character thought about the anniversary. Bloody swords and knives were visible. They protruded from what had once been the head of an elderly man, but was now mutilated beyond recognition. The main character said that he thought they were having a funeral. His attention was attracted by a girl with 2 ponytails who asked who was there. The main character said that it looks like there is a cute toy this time. The girl, modestly looking through the door, asked if this was the top floor and if he was the owner of the tower. The main character said that it was him. Smiling, the girl said that she had already gotten lost many times. Her face was distorted with anger and hostility. She swung her hand, glowing with blue magic, and, cursing, shouted that she had barely found him and would kill him. The main character lifted her off the ground by her hair, and the girl, crying, asked not to kill her. The main character told her not to dream about it, because she made him very angry. He decided to leave it at that. The huge black monster waved its paws as it stood in front of the man with the sword. The guy opened his mouth in amazement. Soon his body was covered with cuts. The monster immediately tore him into pieces. He raised his muzzle with bright red eyes. The main character said that you probably finally realized that all these toys will inevitably die by his hand. His name is Baphomet. He is the lord of this tower, and his profession is to evaluate the quality of toys. There were several skulls on the wall under a red 5-pointed star. Baphomet sat on a black throne surrounded by large swords and axes. A guy with a spear appeared in front of him. Baphomet said that for him there is no greater pleasure in life than the moment of the appearance of another toy. He looked at the guy standing in front of him. Suddenly his eyes became sad. Baphomet said that this is also the source of his despair. Holding the dead guy's leg, he thought that this toy was also broken. He threw the corpse on the floor. He stood in front of a huge red door with a huge black symbol on it. This door is designed in such a way that he cannot open it in any way. Baphomet touched the door with his hand. In other words, the path to the world of toys is closed for him. He lives here aimlessly, waiting for fleeting entertainment, and when the wait for the arrival of the victim drags on, he has to think about what to do with himself. Lowering his head, Baphomet paused. With his eyes widening in anger, he swore that this was complete nonsense, and he was tired of it all. Slamming his fist against the stone door, he wondered why. He wondered why it was so boring here. He continued to pound the door with his fists, wondering the same question. Baphomet, raising his hands up, thought why he was imprisoned here alone, and he could not leave here. He heard his phone vibrate behind him. Looking at the phone, he thought it was the item that the last toy had dropped. A thought occurred to him and he squinted one eye. There was laughter, and a guy in a blue coat, throwing open the doors, shouted that he had finally arrived on the top floor. With a determined but nervous smile, he asked if he was the boss of the tower. He said that he would kill him and finally become the best of hunters. Soon the guy's face was covered with wounds and blood. Kneeling down, the guy asked for mercy. Baphomet began to approach him, and the guy screamed in fear. He covered himself with his hands. Baphomet did not hit him. Showing him the phone, he asked what it was. He was just curious. The guy raised his index finger and said that this gadget opens using facial recognition technology. Baphomet held the severed head up to the phone and the guy said he was doing a great job. He said that it is called a camera, and with its help you can capture moments dear to your heart. He took a photo with Baphomet with the caption, "Friends Forever." Baphomet was curious about what world these toys came from. The guy said that you can still listen to music here, and this is the only legal drug. Slowly getting to his feet, he continued to explain to him the different functions of the phone. Reaching his hand towards the sword, he said that he was doing great. He could even cope without it. Baphomet's feeling went beyond ordinary curiosity. The guy, swinging his sword, asked if he should go to the underworld. Baphomet, exclaiming that this was very interesting, tore off the guy's hand with an indifferent movement. He found something that entertained him in this tower. Looking at the mountain of things lying in the room, He thought that he had a whole cache of things from toys. Looking at the notebook, he asked what kind of collection of drawings it was and what the 3 red stars were. Throwing away the notebook, Baphomet said that they even managed to take garbage with them. He explored with interest the things left behind by people. He picked up a small piece of paper. It was a photo of a happy woman in a white dress. Through these things, Baphomet began to study the life of toys. He was lying on the floor next to the phone, from which a speech was heard in English. However, something was wrong. Baphomet opened his red eyes. The more he learned about the world of toys, the more he wanted to get into their world, into the real world. And what he saw around him was just an illusion. Baphomet extended his black hand towards the light. He thought that the toys had a belief that someone they called God would grant their wishes. Looking at the light through his fingers, he thought, if God exists, maybe he will fulfill his wish too. Music was playing from the phone. The phone screen suddenly went dark. Baphomet, looking at the phone screen, wondered why he was getting goosebumps. Raising his head up, he sighed and thought that there was a howl in the tower, and this meant that someone was coming. Baphomet sat on his high throne. He no longer has expectations. He breaks all the toys, and he'll be done with this one too. The door swung open and a man slowly entered the room. Baphomet thought that he would take away the trophies that would entertain him. The door closed and a guy with white hair, wearing a cloak, entered the room. His yellow eyes were completely focused. The ground under Baphomet's feet began to shake. He suddenly opened his eyes. He wondered why he needed trophies. Grabbing a huge sword, he blocked the guy's attack. The guy's pupil narrowed sharply. Baphomet swung his sword, and the guy dodged, doing a somersault in the air. A stream of blue energy surrounded him. He hit with blue energy and Baphomet jumped back. Looking at the approaching flow of energy, he thought that he had been waiting for this for a very long time. He grinned with excitement and thought that this was real power. There was a strong explosion of blue energy. Dust rose into the air and slowly settled. The guy frowned and watched his opponent. Baphomet, surrounded by a magical barrier with chains, dropped to one knee. He kicked off the ground with his feet, tearing up the stone floor. The floor under the guy's feet was also covered with cracks. Jumping into the attack, they began to exchange quick, strong blows. Baphomet thought he was having fun. As he exchanged blows, he thought that he had been waiting for these long-forgotten emotions for a very long time. Mentally rejoicing, he repelled another attack with a huge sword. A red magic circle appeared in his hand. The chains that emerged from the red magic circles hit the ground with force. Baphomet thought that this was the battle he wanted. The guy flew into the air, dodging the chains. Baphomet jumped after him and thought he was having fun. He raised his hand, standing behind the guy. The guy turned around with a calm, cold gaze. He kicked and Baphomet fell hard onto the stone floor. The guy twirled his blade in his hand. He swung his blade and was surrounded by blue energy. Baphomet lay on the floor in the crater created by his fall. The guy was rapidly approaching him. His blue gaze was completely focused. Baphomet wondered why. Looking at the blue flames that enveloped the guy's sword, he wondered why he was so jealous of this toy. Baphomet was surrounded by red energy and large black wings appeared from his back. Black feathers slowly fell in the air. Baphomet suddenly jumped into the attack. A large black scythe appeared from the magic circle in his hand. Swinging his scythe, he mentally said not to joke with him. The guy struck with a blue flaming sword, ending up behind him. The blue energy approached him and Baphomet raised his palm. A red magic circle appeared in front of his palm, absorbing the guy's blow. The blades of the scythe and sword clanged, and Baphomet wondered if he would really lose to the pathetic toy. After exchanging a few more blows, they sank to the floor. Many red magic circles surrounded Baphomet. Many swords, axes, and spears rushed at the guy. Baphomet thought that he was the ruler of this tower. The guy swung his sword, surrounding himself with blue energy. He was approaching Baphomet, who was standing in a fighting stance. Baphomet again thought that he was the lord of this tower. A white silhouette, appearing behind him, told him with a smile that, even so, he would not get out of here. Ignoring the approaching blue flames, Baphomet turned around in amazement. Blue flames surrounded the magical barrier, in the center of which he was. He covered his face with his hands. Behind the blue flames stood a guy who had a small smirk on his lips. Baphomet thought that some pathetic toy was trying to defeat him on his own domain. He looked at the guy's face behind the blue flame. His eyes glowed white and there was a smile on his face. He looked at him intently. Baphomet stood helplessly under his gaze. Blood gushed from his body. He wondered if it was a toy. There was a blue explosion and he thought he was human. Baphomet thought that he was a free, strong man, and he also wanted to become like him. Looking at the guy's calm face, he thought that he wanted to become as strong and free as him and break out of this musty tower. Baphomet wanted to become a man. Something red flashed into his field of vision. In his blurred vision, he saw a dialogue box. Main quest, kill the hunter, crows. Reward, fulfillment of any desire. The guy plunged his sword into Baphomet's chest. Light particles floated in the air. The blue dialogue boxes say, "You have cleared the abyssal tower. The tower will collapse soon. You need to leave." The guy walked away from the burned body of Baphomet, from whose chest a sword was sticking out. Baphomet looked after him. He saw the door to his room open. Suddenly he grabbed the blade of the sword with a hand black from burns. There was a strong explosion at the top of the tower. People with an excavator were working among the ruins. The men reported that they had found corpses. The man, putting his hand on his head, sighed and asked how many hunters died trying to clear this tower. The other man noticed something. Looking at the naked guy standing on the ruins, he said that he was a survivor. They asked if he was alive. The guy thought that he seemed to have died. The guy froze in fear when the silhouette of Baphomet appeared behind him. He turned around sharply, raising his palm. An explosion of blue energy immediately thundered behind him. Baphomet emerged from the flames. The skin on his face had long since burned away, exposing his white skull. The guy's gaze was empty. Blood was flowing from his mouth. Baphomet pierced his chest with his hand. He held his heart in his own hand. Blood gushed out and he thought that he had killed him and that was why he was alive. The man asked if he was one of the hunters. He said he needed to check it against the database. He asked him to give his name. The main character, raising his palm, smiled. The dialogue boxes say, main quest, kill the hunter, crows. Reward, fulfillment of any desire. The quest is completed. The main character, looking at his palm with a nervous smile, said that his name was Baphomet. He thought that he was a man now. Hunters, people armed with different weapons and wearing different armor. They fight monsters in locations called gates or towers. Previously, the position of hunters in society left much to be desired. However, then the gate was shaken. This is a phenomenon that occurs when a tower has not been cleared for too long. Then monsters break through its walls and wreak havoc in the real world. The shock of the gates carried away a third of humanity to the next world. After this disaster, people began to train hunters to clear the towers. Baphomet, Lord of the Tower of the Abyss. Most of the hunters were killed by him. He became interested in human civilization and wished to become a man himself. However, the first people he met mistook him for the conquering hero of the Abyss Tower. A crowd of reporters surrounded him, asking him what he thought of his conquest of the Abyss Tower. Baphomet stood with a sword in front of a large black dragon. People wanted to see his strength and skill, but, unfortunately for himself, Baphomet lost all his powers. In fact, he was the imposter of the century, the former lord of the tower. People asked him to try something or listen to a joke, calling him Yongnim. The main character raised a tired, gloomy gaze. Now he has become just the hollow leader of the dungeon mining team, some kind of underground mine. A guy with short blonde hair greeted everyone and said that he was new and glad to meet you. The middle-aged man asked with a smile if he really wanted to get to work as soon as possible. The guy, rubbing his neck, said yes. The man, laughing, told him not to be shy. He asked if he had ever done this before. The guy said no. The man told him not to worry, because the work is simple, and you just need strength and patience. The guy, looking around, said that this mine is simply huge. The man said that just a couple of months ago it was much smaller. Pointing his finger at the guy and girl, he said that all this was thanks to the hunters, because they defeated the monsters and moved deeper into the dungeon. He said that he was in charge of Object C and D, and he would work at Object D with his hands folded behind his back. He said that he would not be bored, because rare stones were often found at Object D. Someone sharply shouted for everyone to move aside. The main character pursed his lips tightly. The men surrounded him and shouted that Hyungnim was coming. The guy asked who they were. The man said that he completely forgot to tell him about it. He told him never to mess with these guys. He said that these are outcasts who have infiltrated the mining business. They are aggressive and assert themselves at the expense of those they do not like. Turning his attention to Baphomet, he said, especially this one. The man advised him never to deal with him. Baphomet looked away. The guy asked who could hire them if they were so bad. The man said there was nothing to be done. He said that the mining master really liked him, no matter what he was, and knew his job. An older man with black hair smiled and told someone that he was doing well this month. The worker dissatisfiedly asked who gives wages in an envelope these days. The man said that he doesn't understand anything about nostalgia. He handed the envelope to Baphomet. The man said that he already knew that he sent his salary to the right place. The main character froze. He stood still, trembling, and the man wished everyone a good day. The boy with blonde hair glanced in his direction. The guys invited the main character to have lunch, go to a cyber cafe or to the sauna. The guy with blonde hair raised his hand and asked where he sent all his salary. One of those present swore and hit him in the face. He shouted to him that he would say it himself when he considered it necessary. The guy apologized. The main character was still trembling, without moving. The veins in his face popped out in anger. He rolled his eyes and clenched his teeth. Grabbing his head, he screamed loudly. Clenching his jaw, he thought that he was still asking where. He thought that all his money was going to that charlatan. There was a time when his fame and his deeds went downhill because he was exposed. He was injured and had to seek medical attention. He didn't know that the clinic was an undercover scam and he had no money. A woman in a white robe, stroking a white cat, asked him about his lack of money. Smiling, she said she was sorry and there was nothing she could do. This woman offered him a way out. By placing the protagonist under her shoe, she said that he would pay with his body. Baphomet woke up in a mine. Now he works here, and all his salary goes to her. He stood in a blue uniform among the workers. He thought it wasn't so bad. He was tired of the annoying attention. Every passerby knew his face, and he played the role of a hero, although he was a weakling and an imposter. But the behavior of some miners has also begun to bother me. Someone threw a rock at his head and called him a clown. The guy with short hair grinned and said that he turned out to be a celebrity. He said to tell them too how to become celebrities. Some people recognized him. A stone was thrown at his head, but he did not pay attention. They kept throwing stones at him and he didn't pay attention again and again. Surrounded by mocking people, his eyes widened in anger. However, at one moment he understood. When a person is called a clown, it is offensive. Baphomet punched the guy in the face. He beat them. He beat everyone who provoked him. The man with dark hair said that he heard that he could fight. He offered to fight. The main character beat everyone, and soon some guys started trying to make friends with him. The crowd of people surrounding him called him Hyungnim. Baphomet, smiling bitterly, thought that, in the end, he had gathered a pack of outcasts around him. This is not the same at all. This is not at all the world of people that he wanted to know. The horned monster's eyes flashed red. He rushed to attack the guy, who screamed in fear. Covering his face with his hands, he called for help. The monster's hand was immediately cut off. Blades flashed in the air around him. The guy and the girl cut the monster into pieces. The guy was frightened to see the bloody pieces of the monster falling to the ground. The girl asked him if he was hurt. She said that he couldn't come here because they hadn't cleared it out yet. The guy fearfully thanked her. The man called out to him and shouted that he had told him not to go there. The main character, looking sadly in their direction, thought that he needed this. He doesn't need useless power to kill people, but what hunters can do. Looking at his palm, he wondered if he had lost his strength because he received a human life in return. He thought why he made a wish to become a human. He remembered the hunter he killed as a strong, confident man. A guy with blonde hair, throwing his hands behind his head, said that Hyungnim are hundreds of times cooler than hunters. He asked what they could do. The main character widened his eyes in amazement. The guy with a grin told the bald guy that these hunters would be the same as them if they didn't awaken their powers, and if they awakened their powers, they would kill such monsters instantly. Baphomet thought that when you see very strong hunters, it doesn't seem that way anymore. The guy said that he heard that hunters make good money for trophies from monsters, magic stones, and many hunters live in penthouses on the top floors of skyscrapers. The main character thought that living at the top of a tower didn't sound very attractive to him. The guy with blonde hair said that he believes that they are paid for nothing and that it is just luck, but money earned through their own blood and sweat is a completely different matter. Baphomet thought that everything was the same as always, and those who do not know how big money is earned think that it comes for nothing. The guys called out to the smiling main character and asked what he was dreaming about. The main character, looking at them in amazement, wondered if he was smiling. Scratching his head, he said they just had a good sense of humor. He scratched his cheek awkwardly. The guys looked at him in amazement. One of them asked which of them had the better sense of humor. The other guy said that they had already placed their bets and the first one to make him smile would win. Baphomet opened his eyes in amazement. He thought that this feeling was exactly the same as how he felt in the tower when the toys came to fight him. He thought it was a pleasure. The main character thought maybe he missed his power as Baphomet, but now he doesn't even have to fight for it. Smirking, he wondered which one it was. He thought that now he was a man himself. Baphomet laughed and thought that even without his previous strength he could. The guy asked him if he really didn't have a name. The main character looked at him silently. He said he used to have a name, but he doesn't use it anymore. The guy, raising his thumb up, said that he was very interested in learning about his past. He asked if he wanted to take his name, because his parents had chosen it very carefully, but it had never come in handy. He said they would be very happy if someone so cool took that name. Baphomet asked what his name was. The guy said that he already told him. He started to say his name, but there was a huge explosion behind him. The explosion scattered stone fragments and fragments of wooden structures around. Surrounded by flames, the main character wondered what kind of roar it was, strange and deafening. He asked him to stop. Suddenly he opened his eyes. Holding his chest, he rose from the ground. Looking at his hand, Baphomet wondered if he was injured. He looked around in amazement. As the fire raged, people engulfed in flames called for help and desperately tried to escape. His hand touched something liquid. He looked down. Next to him lay a corpse in a pool of blood. He looked blankly at the bulging eyes on the motionless face of the guy he had just talked to. There were several more similar corpses around him. Baphomet opened his mouth. Baphomet thought annoyingly that the toys were broken again. His eyes bulging, he thought that he was just starting to get used to them. He leaned his hand on the ground, trembling. He asked furiously who it was. A white human silhouette with long hair appeared before his eyes. The main character asked who it was, and the man turned around with a smile. Surrounded by flames, he furiously asked who it was. A bright white flash flashed. Someone addressed the C-rank hunters. The hunter guy was sweating nervously, holding a blade in his hand. Their opponent said that he would have a hard time dealing with the two of them. The hunter girl was breathing heavily. The guy, putting his palm to his face, said that he had achieved a lot by penetrating into this mine. He raised his bangs, showing off the scar on his forehead, and said with a grin that he needed this mine. The hunter guy said it was a hunter-robber. The hunter girl looked at him blankly. The guy said that he thought it was just rumors that there were hunters who attacked the mines to take away magic stones. The hunter girl asked if this newcomer was really that same maniac. The guy said they were only half right. The hunter guy asked if there were any survivors. The girl said that there were a couple of wounded people. The guy asked if maybe they should be taken to the hospital. The girl said that they were unlikely to survive, but that was not what they needed to worry about now. She asked in shock if he wanted them to run away. The guy, sweating nervously, said that he had a B rank and they wouldn't be able to cope. The girl objected that they must take the civilians, otherwise they will die. Turning around, the guy asked how they would do it. He said they needed to go to the surface and call the other hunters for help. Something quickly flashed between them. Two blades flew into the air. Screams rang out and the guy fell to the ground, blood spattering. Rubbing his neck, the guy with the scar said that they were very talkative. The girl rushed to the attack, cursing furiously. The guy smiled calmly. He said that emotions for a hunter are tantamount to death. Blood splattered, and he added, sometimes even literally. The girl widened her eyes in shock. There was a scream and the guy raised his hand. He told someone to come out. Several people appeared from the blue portal. They grinned wickedly. One of them frowned seriously, and the other grinned. The girl was lying on the ground and the guy said he cut her throat because she talked too much. He asked if they would touch the others. The guy said eyeballs are worth the most. He added that she was still alive. Tears began to flow from the girl's eyes. The guy said that this time they would get a good reward thanks to the young C-rank hunter. She asked with a trembling voice what they were planning. The guy said that he already said that they were only half right. Squatting down in front of her, he said that they pretended to be hunter-robbers. He finished his sentence with a grin. The girl looked at him in horror. Two guys pinned her to the ground and she screamed and called for help. One of the men helped the guy light a cigarette. Someone said that one of the corpses had expensive equipment. Another said that it looked rare and could hardly be sold. He told him to leave it. The guy asked what if they took it for themselves. The main character was clutching a blade in his hand, and one of the robbers said that there was no need to take the weapon, because it would reduce their strength to 0%. The guy with the bangs lifted the girl by the hair and said that she was making noise. He asked why she was screaming and if she thought someone would help her. He told her to calm down and asked who could help her here. The guy said that if she were so lucky, she would have spent her lifelong supply of luck. However, when he said this, his severed head was already falling in front of the face of the guy with the scar. Hearing the scream, the guy with the scar turned around, dropping his cigarette. The main character cut off another guy's hand and plunged the blade into his heart. He asked who it was. As he sat among the lights, he angrily shouted which one. He noticed a dialogue box appear in front of him. You have completed a hidden quest. Feel the thirst to avenge a person. Reward, the power you desire. Baphomet asked who the vile worm was that destroyed his toys. He stepped forward. His lips were compressed. The blade was stuck into the ground next to the dead hunter. Baphomet grabbed the hilt of the blade. A blue dialogue box reported that someone else's weapon reduces its strength to 0%. Trying to calculate its strength, the system reported an error. The red dialogue box says, Baphomet user passive skill, Weapon Master. Baphomet pulled the blade out of the ground. The dialogue box says, Weapon Thief perk, part of the Weapon Master passive skill, has been activated. Running forward, the main character swung his sword and cut off the guy's head. The head flew through the air, falling in front of the guy with the scar. The main character asked who he was. The guy grinned and dropped the cigarette from his mouth. Baphomet said that he broke his toys. He stepped on the guy's corpse, and the guy with the scar asked what toys. The main character asked who survived. The guy, calling him sick, asked with a grin what he was talking about. Looking at them, Baphomet asked if they had done it. The guy with the scar mockingly asked if he was still a child, since he was playing with toys. The main character ran sharply towards them. The guy with the scar asked his subordinates why they were standing still. He told them to deal with him. He thought that this bully was actually a hidden hunter. Laughing, he said they would test his levels. The guys, gritting their teeth, grabbed their weapons, and he shouted that the meat itself was going under the knife. Two guys rushed to attack the main character. Baphomet, quickly swinging his blade, knocked the weapon out of their hands. The tip of a bloody blade was approaching the face of one of them. The other guy looked in their direction with fear. The main character pierced the head of a guy with black hair with a blade. Pushing him away with his foot, he pulled the blade from his head, and the other guy furiously rushed to attack him. Baphomet grabbed his wrist. He swung his bloody blade. With one blow he cut off the guy's head. Blood splashed in different directions. The main character looked forward seriously. The guy with the scar looked at him with a smile. Smirking, he thought he was pretty good. He said his performance was good. He struck with the black blade and Baphomet blocked his attack. The guy said that he has a good level. He asked what rank he was. They swung their blades and the guy asked if he was C rank. Smiling widely, he shouted that he was taller than C. The attack flashed next to the main character's head. A drop of blood leaked from a small cut on his cheek. The guy asked what a hunter of this rank was doing in the mine with a pickaxe in his hands. He asked if he, too, had infiltrated here for a similar purpose. He apologized for causing him to reveal his identity. The guy with an unpleasant smile said that this happens. Rushing into the attack, he said that even if he knew what he was up to, he still would not leave here alive. Baphomet gripped the hilt of the blade tightly. A blade flashed in the air. Suddenly, blood gushed out from the protagonist's shoulder. A cut appeared on his cheek. Blood gushed from his leg. He covered his face with his hands, and his hand was also cut. The air swirled around him, and cuts appeared on his body one after another. The guy grinned. He thought that he could not cope with it, and this whip with tips would tame anyone who relied on his dexterity. He struck the main character with a whip. He thought that it was especially effective against those who had never fought a hunter before, and he was just a storehouse of various biogoods, so he would try to kill him without damaging the skin too much. Baphomet suddenly opened his eyes. Swinging his blade, he struck the whip. The guy looked at him with a constant smile in bewilderment. The main character repelled the blows one after another. The dialogue box says, passive skill dash is activated. The negative effect of blood loss activates an increase in abilities by 15%. Baphomet looked at his opponent, covering his face with his hand. The guy thought how he could block it. The protagonist's fist approached him, and he said it was a cheater. Baphomet hit him with his fist, and the guy flew back, scattering stone fragments. Having fallen into a pile of stones, he looked at the main character. Baphomet struck him sharply with his sword. Blocking the attack with his whip, the guy wondered where he got so much strength. The main character swung his sword, raising his hand up. He hit with force, and the guy moved to the side with lightning speed. Baphomet immediately looked at him. Having sharply reduced the distance, he swung his blade again. The guy thought that he suddenly became very confident in himself. He wondered if he thought he was better than him. Smirking, he told him to finish. The whip hit the ground loudly. The guy thought that he would exhaust him with a long fight, and he would not stand it. He thought that, as he thought, he was just an inexperienced B-rank hunter. The protagonist quickly ducked under the whip. The guy wondered if he was right. Baphomet looked at him with eyes with red irises. The guy looked at him in fear. He looked like a monster in his eyes, and he wondered who he was, confused. He thought that it was as if he was not a person at all. The main character swung his blade and blood gushed out. He said that he was taking this hand away for the guy who was ahead of everyone. He remembered the winking guy with short hair. The guy with the scar screamed and cursed in pain. Baphomet immediately cut off his second hand. Remembering the bald guy, he said what a quiet guy he was. Blood gushed out, and the guy screamed in pain again. Baphomet said that he takes this leg for a fat guy who was constantly chewing something. Falling to the ground and bleeding, the guy screamed and asked to stop. The main character said that he takes the other leg for the guy who died before his eyes. He remembered how he said his name was Cha Min Woo. The guy with the scar screamed and the veins on his face bulged violently. Baphomet raised his sword, tipped down, over the guy's throat. Smiling nervously, the guy asked what it was and who he was. Warm blood dripped from the blade, and the main character said that this was because it angered him. The guy smiled fearfully and quietly said no. Baphomet swung his sword, and a stream of blood gushed out of the guy's body. As he plunged the blade into the body, he thought, "It's hot." Blood splashed in all directions, and he thought, "It's hot." The main character continued to strike the enemy's corpse, spraying blood. The red dialogue box says, "Seeking power has dire consequences." Baphomet, his face distorted with rage, wondered where his man was. The dialogue box says, "Debuff Berserker, Bloodlust activated thanks to the charge perk." He thought that he was hot. He wanted blood, there was only meat around, and he needed a survivor. The girl crawled with difficulty on the ground covered in blood. Baphomet put his hand on his head. Turning around, he pointed the blade at her and thought that she was a survivor. With a blank look, he was filled with the desire to kill. The main character thought that he was created to kill people. Covered in blood, he looked at the girl with a mad look. He swung his sword over her head. Someone appeared nearby and radioed to the manager that there were survivors. The main character stopped abruptly, and the man said that something was wrong here. He said that one survivor wants to kill another survivor, there is some meat nearby, and he looks like the one they are looking for. Another man in a suit put his hand on his shoulder and told him to leave the walkie-talkie alone because he was already there. He called out to the main character, who stood confused with a sword in his hands. He said it wasn't the one they were looking for. Baphomet thought that these were people, as many as 2 of them. The man turned around and said that he had seen him somewhere. The main character jumped into the attack. The man with glasses tensed up sharply. The other guy's mouth fell open. The main character angrily shouted at them to die. He suddenly froze as a white hand appeared in front of him. The voice said that saving his life was difficult and they would not let him die like that. A voice told him to go to sleep, placing a hand on his face. Baphomet suddenly stopped a step away from the men, raising his head up. Losing consciousness, he fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth. The men looked at him and asked what was wrong with him. Vague voices called Baphomet by name. Baphomet, the demon, sat on his throne. The voices praised him and asked him to command them. Raising his palm, Baphomet said, "Kill," having ordered the death of all humanity. He said that he was ready to do anything for this. Someone said, "There is a frog in the well." The blade sprayed red blood. A hunter with white hair, piercing the protagonist's chest from behind, asked how he could have known if he had never left the tower. Looking at him closely, he said that he was weak. The main character clenched his teeth. The hunter said that the fate of the weak is death. Baphomet's eyes snapped open, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. He asked in amazement what it was. Rising up, he looked around and asked where he was, because he had just been in the mine. The voice asked him if he could hear it. He said that he had finally woken up. The main character asked who it was. The man in a business suit smiled. He said, "Mr. Imposter." Baphomet turned around. The man said that he recognized him, and he was the one who pretended to be the hunter who cleared the Abyss Tower. He said he allegedly killed the hunter they were tracking. Cupping his chin in his hand, he asked if he was planning some kind of scam again, or if he really had killed him. The main character thought about which hunter he was talking about, and whether it was about the one to whom he cut off everything. The man said that he made inquiries about him, and there is nothing about him in the database. He has no past until recently. He said that he is not registered as a hunter, but he is stronger than many hunters. There is no record of when he applied for hunter status, or to be recognized as an awakened one. The man asked who he was. The main character pursed his lips. A fist was coming towards the man and he said that his fate would depend on how he responded. Baphomet broke the glass with his fist. He said he talks too much. He asked why it mattered to him. The man froze in amazement. The main character said if he wants to know who he is, first be polite and introduce himself. Calling him an arrogant scoundrel, he said that he locked him here, while he himself looked at him from behind the glass. The fluorescent lights were shining on the ceiling, and he asked who made him an imposter, because they themselves gathered around him with enthusiastic exclamations and called him a hero. He said that he killed the hunter they were chasing. He asked if he now needed to repent. Baphomet irritably asked why, because it was he who angered him. He said that even if he were resurrected, he would still kill him again. He said with an unchanged face that he would again cut off all his limbs, destroy him so that not a wet spot remained of him, so that it would be as if he had never existed on this planet. Looking at the man behind the glass, he asked if he wanted him to do the same to him. The man suddenly grinned. He started laughing loudly. The main character looked at his hand in amazement. The man asked if he really thought he could kill him. He entered the room. Standing in front of him, with his hands in his pockets, he said that he was here. He asked with a smile what he would do. Baphomet looked at him, his mouth wide open in amazement. He remembered the hunter with white hair who entered his room in the tower. He remembered the hunter's face. He immediately disappeared from the place. The main character jumped into the attack, extending his hand to the man. His pupils constricted greatly. The man continued to smile without opening his eyes. There was a loud bang. Dust floated in the air over the cracked floor. Baphomet lay on the floor, breathing heavily and his eyes wide open. The man said with a smile that he was truly awakened. Pinning him to the ground, he said, "Well played." The main character, gritting his teeth, thought that he was strong. The man said that he would introduce himself, and they were a secret intelligence agency founded to prosecute delinquent hunters called Rogue. He said that the hunter whom he eliminated was the one who was ordered to be eliminated on the spot. The man with dark hair nodded. The man with glasses said that he was being prosecuted for serious felonies, infiltrating under various guises, killing and selling the organs of lesser hunters. Continuing to hold the main character by the throat, he said that among old billionaires there is a superstition that eating the organs of young awakened ones improves health and even grants immortality. He said that they are grateful to him for freeing them from this task. But nevertheless, murder hangs on him, because he brutally killed 5 of his accomplices. The man said that they examined the bodies and saw that he was acting like a surgeon, and a simple awakened person would not have carried out such a massacre in the very first minutes. Although, of course, if he had been especially gifted with the skills of a killer, the conversation would be different. Without a smile on his face, he said that his experience showed that he was most likely a very experienced killer, and his hands were up to his elbows in blood. The main character looked at him, trembling slightly, and the man said that he only knew about him that he was an imposter, tried to talk to him to get to know him better. Baphomet thought that he was tired of him. The man asked if he wanted to know his conclusion. The main character thought that it took him a lot of work to become human. The man said he was dangerous. Baphomet wondered if he really had no chance against a force like his. The man said that he was a born killer, and if he was not dealt with, someday he would attack other hunters and he would still have to be eliminated. The main character thought, if only he had been at this level from the very beginning, if only his body was stronger like that man's. He remembered the hunter with white hair. Looking at the man in front of him, he thought, or this. He thought that they would all have been torn to shreds by now. The man said with a smile that it looked like they would have to cut this sprout off before it bloomed. The main character looked in fear at the palm approaching him. He mentally cursed. Hunter Administration Central Office. Lots of people were waiting in line around the tables. The girl wished the hunter successful development. Another girl asked how they would pay for the gun rental. The girl called number 122. Smiling, she asked how she could help. The main character stood in front of her, wearing a green jacket and a bandage on his face. Wearing a black baseball cap, he looked at her. He remembered how a man with glasses, laughing, asked if he was scared. Rising to his feet, he said that he was lucky, because even they could not perform such actions. He added that other than that, he liked him. The main character touched his neck and the man said that he looked like someone who could handle any task. He said with a straight face that he would work for Rogue and his talents were exactly what they needed. Baphomet said that he came to register his status as a hunter. The girl asked for his ID and certificate of hunter's abilities. The man said that they would correct his biography in the database and give him a certificate of hunter ability. The girl said with a smile that the verification was successful and he needed to register the hunter's nickname. The man, raising his index finger, said that hunters take pseudonyms to distinguish themselves from ordinary people, and they cannot do without a nickname. The girl said that his nickname should be different from his name on the documents. She asked if he already had options, or if she could give him some advice. The man said that their work likes silence and anonymity, because it already attracts too much attention, so it's better for him not to stand out. Baphomet smiled. He thought that he would regret leaving him alive, because he would become stronger than all of them. He said, Baphomet. He thought that he would make his name alone make these people tremble. The white wolf opened his mouth with sharp teeth. The main character, dressed in a hood, smashed his head with his knee. Another wolf attacked him from behind. Baphomet extended his hand to him. He hit the wolf on the ground, spraying blood. The wolves behind him looked fearful. With their tails between their legs, they began to leave. A huge white paw hit the ground with a roar. A huge monster, similar to a wolf, was approaching the main character. The monster swung its paw at him. Baphomet stopped him by holding out his palm. He raised his palm up. Standing in this position, he said, "Come out." Nothing happened. The main character said that they are not going out. The monster immediately struck with force with his paw. Noticing something, he opened his eyes wide. Baphomet hit him in the stomach. On the other side, blood gushed out from the monster's body. Coming out of the portal, the main character thought that he did not expect anything else. Looking at his palm, he thought that only part of his strength had returned to him, and there could only be one reason for this. The red dialogue box says, "Hidden quest completed. Feel the urge to avenge the person. Reward, the power you desire." Baphomet, rubbing his chin, thought that his desire at that moment was to kill these criminals, and he was given exactly that much power. Raising his eyebrows, he thought about how to understand this and why someone was constantly demanding something from him, both in the tower and now. Scratching the back of his head, he wondered who would answer this question for him, since he was talking to himself. He thought that he knew exactly what he would strive for. Clenching his hand into a fist, the main character thought, to strength. He thought that there was nothing wrong with the fact that he did not have the same strength, and he just needed to increase it. This is not the first time for him to start from scratch. Laughing, someone asked if he was the same Baphomet. The main character suddenly felt a glance behind him. Gritting his teeth, he turned around and wondered who it was. The bespectacled man said with a frown that he seemed to be very attention-stressed. His voice from the phone asked how it even occurred to him to call himself by the name of the Lord of the Tower of the Abyss. Baphomet asked what they were showing him. The guy said it was a video call from the boss. The man with glasses said he told him he should attract as little attention as possible. The main character was picking his ear, and the man said that he understands that he wanted to stab those who call him an imposter, but all the hunters already know about him, so he did himself a big favor. He added that the investigation into the Abyssal Tower has been completed, and it has been determined that it was in fact the hunter Raven who cleared it. Baphomet suddenly froze. The man said that this was bad news for him because Korea had lost its best hunter to a demon named Baphomet, and now he would have to figure out what to do about it. The main character asked what was wrong with this, and whether he thought that he should be afraid of every rustle and walk around looking around. He said that he didn't care about their chatter, because he had already heard so much that he didn't care anymore. He said his only goal now is to become stronger and shut their mouths. Silence fell between them. The man, clicking his tongue, said that he could speak, but somehow he didn't believe that he could stand it. He told him to go and experience the consequences of his actions, and they would meet on Jeju Island. The main character looked around the street with palm trees in amazement. His cheeks turned slightly red. Looking at the blue water, he wondered if this was the sea, like in the photographs he had looked at. The guy in the blue baseball cap said they would take a taxi. Baphomet, not listening to him, ran away, shouting about the sea. He shouted that it was very beautiful, and there was no end to it. The guy remembered how he told the man with glasses that he couldn't be trusted. He asked if he was sure he wanted to keep him in the service. The man asked if he suggested leaving everything halfway. Calling him T-Yoon, he said that he himself knows that this job is not for mentally healthy people. With his hands folded in front of his face, he said that they needed someone amoral enough. He added that they were still watching him, and it would only take one wrong step for them. A guy with blonde hair was talking to a girl. The main character asked about his blue eyes. The guy paid attention to him. Baphomet, staring uncomfortably at his face, said that this was a completely different type of toy than the one he was talking about. T-Yoon, dragging him away by the hood, told him to immediately stop disgracing their country. The sun was shining brightly in the sky. T-Yoon said that new hunters undergo career guidance here. The main character asked about career guidance. T-Yoon said that this is a training course that develops abilities. Baphomet asked why, and why not just let the hunters kill the monsters. T-Yoon said that it is because this country is run by old people. Correcting himself, he said that this is the law, and, unlike other countries, in Korea the people choose the hunters. The main character asked if this meant that they intended to use them for their own purposes. T-Yoon said that he would give him his luggage, ID and smartphone. Baphomet joyfully exclaimed about the smartphone. T-Yoon asked about calling him Cha Min-woo when people are around. Looking at his ID, the main character remembered the guy's words that his parents chose his name very carefully, but he never became famous. T-Yoon said it's almost time. He told him to go. Baphomet said that he thought that he would go with him, because he had been following him before. T-Yoon thought he was observant. He told him to come in and maybe he would understand. The main character, with a disappointed face, thought that he would come in and understand. The man, having greeted the hunters, said that he would be the presenter at their career guidance. He said with a smile that his name was Ma Seong-woo. Baphomet thought he was talking about this. People were carrying food in plates, and the main character asked what it meant. He asked Ma Seong-woo what this meant since he was a member of Rogue. Ma Seong-woo told him to be quiet and asked if he wanted to be heard. He said that in normal life he is a hunter relations manager. Baphomet, frowning, said that he called him an imposter. Laughing, Ma Xiongwon said that this is different and he is really an imposter. Turning around, he told him to pay attention because everyone had been talking about him for quite some time. He said that he rallied them against himself because Baphomet is their #1 enemy. People, looking aggressively at the main character, said that this imposter had the audacity to come here and also took the nickname Baphomet. The main character looked at them indifferently. Ma Xiongwon whispered to him not to act like he knew him, otherwise his notoriety would spread to him. The girl, waving her hand, called out to him. Ma Xiongwon turned and said that he was coming. Closing his eyes, Baphomet thought that he would just eat. He suddenly opened his eyes. The girl said that, according to rumors, they were going to establish a new division of hunters. She asked if anyone had heard about it. Ma Xiongwon said that it was nothing special, just another command. He said that they have already become interested in this at the state level. He asked if they were doing this. The girl with dark hair said wearily that they were doing this, and this imposter was causing so much noise that they would have problems. She asked who in their right mind could call themselves Baphomet. Ma Xiongwon said that it is possible to reach an agreement with the government. If you fuss a little, they will have the correct documents, and this could be a good precedent. They apologized and Ma Xiongwon smiled. He thought that even his subordinates hated him, and among the hunters he was even more of an outcast. He thought, if only Baphomet didn't stand out, because his influence and ability to bribe the right people are also not unlimited. He wondered why he had such bliss on his face, and was he really trying to enjoy this situation? He thought that from a psychological point of view everything was correct, and at least he had enough intelligence and will not to despair. Noticing something, Ma Xiongwon frowned. Several people entered the room. Around their necks were badges with a yellow rope. Ma Xiongwon wondered how the rank hunters got here. Sweating nervously, he asked what was going on. The girl asked if he hadn't received the message. She said that several rank hunters will begin their advanced training course today. Ma Xiongwon said it was scheduled for next week. The girl said that the date has been moved many times, so she understands why he is surprised. She said it was a great opportunity for them and they would be role models for new hunters. Ma Xiongwon, smiling nervously, agreed and spoke about a role model. He thought, for all but one. Baphomet looked at the food on the table with a happy smile. He thought that he had taken the smartphone from one of the toys in the tower, and there was similar food on it. He wondered what it would be like to enjoy food, since as a demon he had never felt the need for nutrition. He thought that when he became human, he ate a lot of rice soups and ramen, but not like this. The main character thought about what the toys say in such cases. He started to say bon appetit, but a glass of water was poured on him. Everyone turned sharply in his direction. The guy exclaimed that this was the famous Baphomet. Someone asked who it was. The red-haired guy said that he finally saw him with his own eyes, but he was disappointed, because for such a nickname he has a rather boring face. Someone said it was Leon, a rank hunter, calling him Bang Jai-H1. The guy with dark hair asked what he did. Frowning his brows and narrowing his eyes, he asked how he was acting in front of everyone. Bang Jai-H1 gritted his teeth and said that he couldn't just pass by with that scoundrel sitting among them. The guy apologized to the main character, but asked him to understand, because he himself achieved this, and the demon Baphomet took the lives of many of their hunter friends. He said that taking such a nickname is tantamount to spitting in the face of all his victims and their loved ones. The main character opened his eyes wide. The guy said he thought he should change his nickname. Baphomet turned the plate of food over Bang Jai-H1's head. People opened their mouths in amazement. Ma Xiongwon fell face down on the table. Bang Jai-H1 clenched his teeth in irritation. Grabbing the main character by the collar, he asked if he was in a hurry to die. The main character asked why they were all so worried about me, because he wouldn't be resurrected just because he took his name. Bang Jai-H1 swore angrily. Baphomet, smiling, asked why they themselves didn't go and defeat this Baphomet if they were so worried about the deaths of these people. He said that all he saw was that they were bragging to him about their worthlessness. A guy with dark hair asked if he was completely crazy. The main character exclaimed that he understood, and they simply would not have the strength to go to this tower. He asked if they were angry about the truth. Shrouded in a blue aura, Bang Jai-H1 clenched his hand into a fist and asked if he had said everything. A dialogue box reported that the physical strength buff had been activated. Ma Xiongwon looked at them in amazement. Bang Jai-H1 angrily said that Baphomet killed him. He remembered how the guy with white hair told him that his shot was well placed and it was almost impossible to block it. He said he was confident that he would pass the test and get a rank. Punching his fist, Bang Jai-H1 shouted that he had killed Raven. Baphomet, looking at his fist, thought whether he should dodge or block. He thought that, one way or another, blood could not be avoided. A guy with white hair caught his hand and said that it is forbidden to start fights here. Bang Jai-H1 looked in his direction in amazement. Baphomet also looked at him. He thought that he had seen it somewhere before. The guy exclaimed, and the guy in the t-shirt asked who he was. He said it was his brother. The main character opened his eyes in amazement, and the guy said that this was Raven's younger brother. The guy looked like an almost exact copy of Raven. The guy asked about having a younger brother. Another guy said that he is, and he is famous. He said that he was the youngest rank hunter, nicknamed Griffin. The guy exclaimed that this was a pleasant meeting, and he did not think that he would come for retraining this time. Bang Jai-H1 asked what it means that it is forbidden to start fights, and whether he should now welcome this moral monster. Griffin said the man said nothing offensive. He said that if his brother had dealt with Baphomet earlier, and if he had been stronger, he would have returned alive. Bang Jai-H1 angrily called him ungrateful. Ma Xiangwang asked them not to engage in disputes here. Smiling, he said that there was no need to quarrel, especially since people were looking at them. Bang Jai-H1 asked why they let him in. He said irritably that he seemed to be one of the managers working with hunters, and should not have let him in here. The guy gritted his teeth and grabbed his head. Ma Xiangwang silently looked at him with a smile. He apologized for what happened. Approaching the main character, he asked him to come with him to talk. The main character asked why he had to go somewhere. Ma Xiangwang told him to shut up in an irritated whisper. They left and Baphomet scratched the back of his head. Griffin watched them go with a gloomy look. The sunlight above the building turned orange. The girl, having greeted the newly arrived hunters, said that her name was Yu-Jun, and she would conduct an introductory program on the topic of the system. Raising a finger, she said that when they experienced the awakening, the first thing they saw was the system window. She asked if everyone understood what she was talking about. Yu-Jun said that for hunters who have not yet learned how to use the system, their data management team has prepared a special program. The main character, looking bored, remembered how Ma Xiangwang told him to hit him. Standing with him in the toilet, he told him to hit him once. Baphomet asked what was wrong with him and why he should beat him. Ma Xiangwang said that if he hadn't hired him, none of this would have happened, and it was his fault. He told him to hit him already. The main character asked if he was serious, because it would hurt. He thought that he would finally get his revenge. Ma Xiangwang said that it looked like he would actually hit him. He asked if he even had a conscience. Baphomet asked what he wanted from him and if he wanted him to hold back after everything that had happened. Ma Xiangwang told him to hold back and push himself until he became stronger. Folding his hands on his chest, he told him that no one would dare to mock him like that when he became stronger, and now he needed to behave more quietly. And below the grass, he said that even if he was cloned 100 times, he wouldn't even be able to handle any of the ranks. And that was the reality. The phone screen says, investigation has confirmed that this is an imposter, a man who pretended to be a hero who cleared the tower. Well done to the man who claimed to have cleared the tower of Baphomet. The guy said that this means that this is the same scoundrel. He said irritably that he came to their course as if nothing had happened. Another guy said that he was giving them hunters a bad name and that it made him lose the mood to study. The main character hit the vending machine with his fist. The guys turned around in amazement. Baphomet said that this thing ate his money. Giving them an irritated look, he asked if he could beat the thing a little so it would spit his money back out. The guys widened their eyes in fear. They turned around and told each other that a fight was planned between rank hunters in the GXR office. The guy with black hair wondered what was wrong with him, and whether he was behaving this way on purpose. The other guy thought he looked like a killer, like he'd already killed someone. Rubbing his neck, Baphomet thought that he hoped they would calm down and he could cope even without fists. He exclaimed joyfully that he had received a free jar and it was a jackpot. Taking a sip from the can, he thought that the two were talking about a friendly fight between the ranks. The sky turned dark blue. The main character, leaning slightly, looked, standing behind the people. The guy in the black t-shirt fell to the floor. Someone announced the victory of the hunter Leon. The guy, rubbing the back of his head, said that he didn't think he could beat him, but he learned a lot. Bang Jai-H1 told him that he was doing better. The guy in the black suit said that Hunter Leon has won the 9th fight in a row. He asked who was next. People looked around awkwardly. Bang Jai-H1 called out to Griffin. He asked how about sparring. The guy announced the rules. Griffin took off his badge. The guy said that the first one to grab the opponent's blue headband wins. He said that passive and, especially, active skills are prohibited. This is just sparring, and if he notices a danger, he will immediately stop them. Ma Xiangwang asked if they were facing off again. The girl said that the newcomers also came to watch. Ma Xiangwang said with a smile that her ranks will be role models for them. He noticed Baphomet standing below. The girl with dark hair said that Hunter Griffin was very handsome. Looking at him, she spoke about his beauty. Ma Xiangwon and Yu Jun smiled nervously as they watched her. Yu Jun said that Griffin is very popular. She asked the general manager how old he was. Ma Xiangwon said that he seemed to be in the second year of high school. There was a pause between them. The girl with dark hair exclaimed in amazement. Bang Jiachuan and Griffin clashed in a fight. Bang Jiachuan asked if he would show him what he had learned. Griffin silently looked at him with a concentrated gaze. Bending sharply, he swung his leg. Bang Jiachuan punched, but he ducked. Griffin looked up. He waved his hand and Bang Jiachuan stepped back. Griffin continued to advance and attack him, forcing him back until he grabbed his arm. Breaking free from his grip, Bang Jiachuan thought that he was still just as sweeping. Stretching out his hand to his bandage, he thought that a little more and he would catch it. He clenched his hand into a fist, but Griffin immediately moved behind him. Bang Jiachuan turned around in amazement. Griffin tore off his blue bandage. The observers opened their mouths in amazement. The main character watched with an indifferent expression. Someone exclaimed in amazement about the counterattack. The guy declared Griffin the winner. Someone said that Leon couldn't keep up with him. Someone asked if the others saw how fast Griffin was, because he didn't have time to notice anything. Griffin looked towards the crowd and someone said that he is so good even without skills and he is number 1 among the rankers. Someone extended his hand and said that he could reach S-Rank very soon. Bang Jiachuan said that he gave in to him first and then seized the moment when he didn't expect it. And he is growing up. If his brother saw this, he would be proud of him. Griffin, ignoring him, asked the referee if he could continue the fight. The judge asked with whom. Griffin said, with Baphomet. Baphomet stood indifferently in the crowd. Then he opened his eyes in amazement. Bang Jiachuan called out to him. The judge objected that he was not a rank and was generally a beginner. Ma Xiangwon said it was a great idea. He suggested doing an experiment to see how much difference there was between the newbies and the current rankers, and the newbies would have a lot to learn from watching this fight. The judge said that Griffin needs to be restrained a little for this fight. Baphomet stood opposite him. He wondered irritably what Ma Xiangwon was thinking about, since he himself told him to keep his head down. Ma Xiangwon thought that he would get punches, and then he would learn not to stand out. The main character, raising an eyebrow, thought that this was Raven's little brother. Griffin stretched his shoulders, and Baphomet thought that he would not deceive himself. He could not cope with him. Griffin looked at him with a serious expression on his face. The main character thought that he needed to take at least a couple of hits and then give up. While he was rubbing his neck, Griffin had already rushed to attack. Baphomet abruptly blocked his blow. Griffin grabbed him by the arm, and the main character thought that it would be good to land at least one blow here. Griffin dropped it to the floor, and Baphomet thought it would be nice not to die while doing so. Griffin's fist was approaching the protagonist's face. Baphomet moved sharply to the side, and he hit the floor, leaving cracks in it. Looking at how he swung his fist, the main character mentally cursed. He thought that he knew that he had chosen it to split it into atoms. The audience said that he probably also pisses him off because he named himself after his brother's killer. Griffin raised his fist. One of the spectators said that now he was definitely finished. Griffin hit the main character in the shoulder. Baphomet irritably thought it hurt. Wanting to land at least one blow, he swung his leg, but Griffin dodged. Grabbing him by the neck, he pinned him to the floor. The main character suddenly raised his legs. Jumping out of his grasp, he landed on the floor. Getting up, he wiped his face and thought that he was playing with him, like a cat with a mouse. Griffin looked at him, and Baphomet thought that with his previous strength, he would already be dead. The main character removed his hand from his face. Griffin swung his fist, and Baphomet thought he was sorry. As he dodged, he thought that he wished he hadn't been restrained. Griffin appeared behind him, and the main character thought that he would like to see his real strength. The opponent elbowed him in the face, and Baphomet thought that he would like to see him fight with all his abilities. He thought with a joyful smile that he would like to see how strong he was. Griffin's fist stopped in front of his face. He said, "Let's finish this." Baphomet's eyes widened in amazement. He thought about why he wanted to stop. Griffin said he didn't see any point in continuing. The judge agreed and said it was a special fight. He asked who was next. The main character with a red face thought that he wants to fight and he wants to continue. He remembered Ma Xiangwon's words that even if he was cloned 100 times, he still wouldn't defeat anyone from the A rank, so he advises him not to stand out. He thought that he was right, and he was still weak, but why did he feel like he had flown away somewhere? Someone rudely shouted at him to stop. The main character smiled madly. The demon Baphomet behind him showed his middle finger. Griffin's eyes widened sharply. He felt a huge black paw approaching. Turning around, he kicked, throwing the main character back. Ma Xiangwon rubbed his chin in amazement. Griffin, his mouth wide open, said, "Oh." The main character flew out of the window into the street. There was a big splash in the pool surrounded by girls. The girls around shouted that something had fallen. Someone shouted that someone had fallen into the pool, and the girl with blonde hair turned around. Baphomet thought that he did not expect him to defeat him with one blow. He thought that, nevertheless, he had gained some insight into his skills, and someday the day would come when he would bring him to his knees. He thought about how to swim. The main character, his eyes bulging, waved his arms helplessly under the water. He opened his mouth and thought he was choking. Looking at the light passing through the surface of the water, he thought that he was losing consciousness. The silhouette of a girl was approaching him. This girl had long blonde hair. Baphomet touched his face with his hand. He looked in front of him questioningly. He noticed that the girl in front of him had yellow hair and blue eyes. The girl's golden hair fluttered under the water. The main character looked at her with a tired look. He opened his mouth, reaching out his hand to her face. He thought that he couldn't do this anymore. Grabbing her head, he mentally told her to save him because he couldn't breathe. The girl next to the pool said that it had been quite some time since she dived in to save him. The water surface of the pool was motionless. Suddenly, yellow hair rose to the surface. The girls opened their mouths in amazement. They exclaimed in amazement that it was hair. One of them said to call for help because it looked like something terrible had happened. Baphomet in the form of a demon stood with a spear, and he heard a voice that said, "Number 18. Baphomet opened his eyes in amazement. The voice told him to stand still and get ready for work. Baphomet asked about work. The other demon said yes. Baphomet asked what kind of work it was. The demon asked if he was awake yet. He said it was time to hunt people. While he was saying this, a man with a grin cut off his head. The main character opened his eyes, putting his hand on his head. He thought that after he became human, he constantly sees these dreams. He noticed an open mouth nearby. A girl with blonde hair, dressed in a blue swimsuit, lay next to her with her eyes closed. Baphomet thought that she was a foreigner and remembered that it seemed that when he fell into the water, this foreigner dived after him. A girl with red hair with a menacing expression on her face asked if he would stop staring in a good way before she personally buried him with her bare hands. The main character suddenly rose from the ground, crashing his back into someone's legs. He turned around. Two girls in swimsuits looked at him with hostility, and he wondered what kind of girls they were. Ma Xiangwun came running to them, apologized and said that it was a problem on their part. He asked if there were any casualties here. The girl turned around, and he exclaimed that this was a representative of the Ark Guild, the Huntress Echidna. Ma Xiangwun said that they didn't know she would be here. He asked if she was hurt anywhere. The Echidna loudly called out to Yunhai. Yunhai raised her hand and shouted that she was coming. She handed her strands of blonde hair, and Echidna asked if she had accurately counted all the strands. The Echidna praised her, stroking her under the chin. She and Ma Xiangwun looked at each other silently. Echidna said that their guild is on a group vacation, so they started coming and staying at this hotel since yesterday. And now everyone is at the pool party. Pointing her finger at the main character, she said that he suddenly fell from the sky and ruined their party. And she heard that they were having an introduction at a nearby hotel. She asked if this guy was a new hunter and if he was just training now. Ma Xiangwun said yes and apologized. Holding a strand of blonde hair in her hand, Echidna asked if he knew what it was. Ma Xiangwun asked if it was hair. Echidna said that this is not an ordinary hair. She said it was the price of waking up early and renting a completely expensive hair salon in Gangnam. The price of expensive organic ingredients that are sourced directly from the mountains every day for such healthy and shiny hair. And her time and effort equal to the value of gold to make this lazy girl pay so much attention to her hair. Opening her tired eyes wide, Echidna screamed about those dark circles under her eyes. The girls covered the girl with blonde hair with a blanket, and Echidna shouted that this hair contained all of the above, since it belonged to a representative of their guild. An awkward silence fell between them. Ma Xiangwun apologized sincerely and asked how he could atone for their guilt. Echidna, looking at Baphomet, said that he must take responsibility for this. The main character opened his eyes. Echidna said that there is 1,000,001 in one strand. There are 116 strands in total, which means a total of 116,000,001. She said to compensate them for this. Ma Xiangwun thought that he ruined everything, and the hunter Echidna is so obsessed with money that nothing else worries her anymore. Today the sad meeting with the rank hunters has already ended, and now there are also problems with the Ark Guild. Grabbing his head, he thought how many bad things he had done in his past life to pay so much in this one. The main character asked if paying 1,000,001 for a strand of hair wasn't absurd. He asked who she was, and whether this thing, or rather, this person, was worth paying so much money for. The girls' glances immediately became sharper. One of them said that this was too much. Another asked if he really didn't know. Baphomet wondered what was wrong with them. The girl said, "Codename Valkyrie, an S-rank hunter, also ranked first in popularity. She has amazing skills, and there is nothing to say about her appearance." Frowning, she said that she was the #1 commercial model and everything she wore and used always sold out. The main character thought what nonsense this was. Echidna stopped them and said that they would only waste time explaining everything to this newbie. Approaching the main character, she said that it seems that he is quite new to this field, and she will say directly, if he wants to peacefully and calmly advance as a hunter further, just compensate them for the entire amount. The protagonist's pupils shrank when she said that if it is difficult to give the entire amount at once, he can give it in installments, or she can find him a job so that he pays with his body. An old trauma about a woman who trampled him and told him to pay with her body resurfaced in his head. Baphomet, cursing, asked if she considered him a weakling. Echidna irritably asked what nonsense he was saying. Baphomet said that if they really want to figure out whose fault it is, they must first ask what happened. Pointing his finger at Ma Xiangwu, he annoyedly said that it was his fault and they did not take proper measures in this situation. He said his kick sent him flying. Griffin stood with a permanently expressionless face. The girls thought in amazement, what does Griffin have to do with it? And it is absolutely impossible to have a bad relationship with him, because he is a member of the Nebula Guild, and standing up against this guild would be problematic. Echidna folded her arms over her chest thoughtfully. She told Griffin that the hunter said he kicked him and sent him flying. She asked if it was true. Griffin said yes. Yujun said that they had a friendly match between a rank hunter and a rookie hunter. Echidna said, does that mean it was all a mistake? Looking at the main character, she asked him what they should do. She said that she believed that this fact did not change the fact that, as she said, he should compensate them. Ma Xiangwung said with a nervous smile that their side would take care of the compensation. Echidna asked about central control. Ma Xiangwung said yes, because they are closely related to this incident, but providing monetary compensation is against government guidelines. He asked how about exclusive rights to the tower. The Echidna opened her eyes in amazement. Exclusive tower rights are a system that allows a specific guild to monopolize more than one tower for itself. The peculiarity of the towers is that guilds with exclusive rights can receive an infinite number of magic stones and items, since the monster continues to be resurrected until the tower is cleared. The real goose that lays the golden eggs. In addition, hunters who are not part of a guild with exclusive rights must donate part of the prey to it and in no case completely clear the tower. A small number of hunters say the system is absurd, but who cares? If someone is jealous, they can join a stronger guild. Ma Xiangwu, raising his index finger, said that they just have a tower that has not been cleared for a year and a half. He asked what they thought about taking ownership for a year. Echidna said that she could not resolve this issue alone, so she would discuss it with the guild members. The girl behind them thought they were glad she took time to think. Yujun asked if they could decide for themselves whether to give them rights to the tower. Ma Xiangwung said that on the contrary, this is only good, because their guild will restore order there. Echidna put her hand to her chin thoughtfully. She said they accepted their offer. Ma Xiangwun gave 2 thumbs up and said it was a great choice. Valkyrie opened her eyes and Echidna asked if she had come to her senses. She asked if she was feeling okay. Valkyrie stood up and said yes. Echidna said it was time for them to go. Valkyrie asked what the people from Central Control were doing here. Echidna said that they would explain everything to her later. Girls in swimsuits walked past the main character. He looked in their direction. He looked at Valkyrie, who had a bright light shining on her from the front. Valkyrie looked back at him. Baphomet opened his eyes in amazement. Valkyrie smiled and winked at him. She turned around, and the main character wondered in amazement what it was just now. Ma Xiangwung said that they also want to apologize to them. Bowing before the main character and Griffin, he said that they should have taken care of unforeseen situations like this in advance. It was their fault, and they apologize again. Griffin and Baphomet awkwardly looked away. The lights in half the windows of the building were turned off. The main character thought about hunters obsessed with money. He thought about all kinds of hunters. A hand appeared behind him, and he wondered why this foreign woman winked at him, and whether it was a call for a fight. Griffin tore off his blue bandage. Baphomet asked what he was doing. Griffin said he couldn't even sense its presence. He asked how he was able to remove the cloth he was wearing at the time. They remembered how people said it had fallen. Griffin's eyes widened in amazement. He looked down. The blue bandage on his arm was no longer there. An outdoor lamp shone over the pool. The blue headband floated in the pool. Baphomet, rubbing his neck, asked if he followed him just to ask that. He said that his movements were too sweeping, and the fabric hung there as if asking him to pull it off. Griffin asked how he, a novice hunter, could pull this off. He said that only a hunter with extensive combat experience could notice such a small thing. He asked who he really was. The main character looked at him silently. He told him to let him ask too. He asked if he did it out of emotion when he chose him because he was using the name of the monster who killed his brother. He asked if hunters should be so controlled by emotions and feelings. Griffin told him not to change the subject and to answer the question. Baphomet said that if his interlocutor had been reasonable, he would have answered the question. Griffin clenched his teeth. He asked if he wanted to say that he was taking revenge on him. The main character raised his head and Griffin said that he just wanted to choose someone to vent his anger on when sparring. Baphomet thoughtfully put his hand to his chin. Griffin asked if this answer was enough for him and if he could now answer the question. The main character asked if the reason for his anger was that Baphomet killed the brother whom he wanted to kill. Griffin's eyes widened in amazement. His face returned to normal and he asked, "What?" Baphomet exclaimed that he was right. He said that he didn't feel an ounce of hatred when he picked and beat him. But what he just said, his emotions were open hatred. He said that he simply took out his anger on him, who bears the name of Baphomet, the monster who killed his brother, whom he himself wanted to kill. Baphomet asked if he was right. Griffin asked about a hunter trying to kill a hunter. He asked if he meant to say that he wanted to personally kill his brother. The main character said that hunters are not saints and can kill people, although it remains a mystery to him why he wanted to kill his blood brother. Griffin looked at him silently. He asked to be allowed to change the question. He said that the murderous aura he emitted at the end could only be felt in one place, either the dungeon or the tower. Standing close to him, he said, only from monsters of the highest rank. He asked how a person could have the aura of a monster. Griffin said the answer comes naturally. He's a monster in the guise of a man. The main character grinned. Throwing his head up, he laughed loudly. He stopped laughing after a while. Baphomet said with a wide smile that he was a really interesting toy. He thought, just like his brother. Raising his palm, he said they would assume he was a monster. He said that he is the monster. He asked what he would do. Griffin said that no matter what hunter you ask about monsters, they will say that they must be killed right away. The main character asked if he really is a monster, as he said, does this mean that their relationship is tied to death? Grabbing him by the collar, he said that they were in the same boat. He said with a smile, a boat in which we must kill each other. He said that he would wait for the day when he would truly know his true self. Baphomet said that he hoped he would become stronger, otherwise he would die by his hand. Walking among the cramped city streets, the protagonist asked where they were going. Ma Xiangwang said with a smile that he shouldn't constantly run from internet cafes to public baths, and he prepared a place for him to stay as a reward for successfully completing the orientation training. He thought that, however, the training had not gone so smoothly. Standing next to the green door, he solemnly announced that they had arrived. Showing him a nondescript yard, he said, a large, ecologically clean, green yard. Showing a dilapidated building, he said, a traditional Korean house. Ma Xiangwang and the main character were standing in the courtyard, and a sad wind blew. He thought that, as he expected, the reaction was so-so. Imagining an angry and displeased Baphomet, he thought that he knew this would happen, so he was ready for such an answer. Ma Xiangwang, frowning, told him not to consider such a house inconvenient, because a house on the outskirts of Seoul is the best place to pacify his aggression. Baphomet said that this house is not so bad. Looking around, he said that weeds and grass can be easily gotten rid of, and an open yard is good. To the bewilderment of Ma Xiangwang, he said that you can make repairs here and live in peace. Ma Xiangwang asked if he was going to complain or if he had problems with his head after falling into the pool. Baphomet said irritably that he was fine. Ma Xiangwang said that originally he would have said that he should live in a high-rise building and enjoy looking down on people and shouting that they are fools. The main character said that living in a high-rise building is like being locked up, so he doesn't envy the people living there at all. Turning away, Ma Xiangwang said that it was not interesting. Baphomet irritably asked what kind of expression this is. Ma Xiangwang asked if anything unusual happened after the first orientation day. The main character said yes. Remembering how Griffin constantly looked at him intently, he thought that from somewhere this gaze continued to be felt. Griffin was watching him even in the toilet, and Baphomet thought that it was not worth mentioning now. A dark silhouette watched them. Someone said that a young guy had joined them, and it would be nice to use him for their own purposes. He said, let's do it. The main character turned his head sharply, and Ma Xiangwang asked what happened. Baphomet said that it seemed to him that someone was looking at them. Ma Xiangwang said that there was no one there. Ma Xiangwang sat down with his hands folded in front of his face and suggested that the briefing begin. He apologized for making him work immediately after finishing the orientation, but he is the most suitable for the job. He said that after familiarization, novice hunters are placed with a mentor in groups of 4 to get used to real combat. He told him who would be his object of observation this time. The guy, looking at the tablet, asked that no one had come yet. The guy in the shirt pointed and said he was coming. The main character came and rubbing his neck and lowering his head. The man said that he became a mentor for such a famous person. Baphomet looked at him. A man with an unshaven face and bags under his eyes said it was an honor. The main character, grimacing his face, asked about the fact that this was surveillance, and not an object for instant murder. Raising his finger, Ma Xiangwang asked if he knew what driven hunting was. He said that by now he should be familiar with the terms in the games, and in practice this means a method of hunting in which he corners an animal. He said that there is another meaning. In order to find what or who is behind a certain case, you first need to corner everyone involved in it. Baphomet asked that, in short, he must dig up everything about this mentor and catch the one who is behind him. Ma Xiangwang said that in general he is right, and if the mentor has a B-rank hunter, then the one behind him should definitely be higher. He asked how he was going to catch the one behind the mentor if he had a rank of exactly B. The main character gritted his teeth. The man said with a smile that his code name is Quartz. He is a B-rank hunter. He used to be a freelancer too, but his wife wanted a stable life and salary, so, unfortunately for him, he gave up all this romance and fell to the level of a government dog. He asked Baphomet if he had any questions about what he said. The main character said no. Quartz said he would move on to the safety clauses. Baphomet wondered if he was kidding. He remembered how he asked Ma Xiangwang about a hunter who hunts a hunter. Ma Xiangwang said that raising livestock began with simple hunting of animals. The main character asked, so what? Ma Xiangwang said that this is also part of the hunter's job, and if he cannot get information, he will not be able to catch the target. In addition, he asks him not only to keep an eye on him. Baphomet opened his mouth. Ma Xiangwang told him to get close to this mentor and, if after that he could find evidence of his involvement in the crime, not to kill him, but to bring him alive. Smiling, the main character thought, easy. He wondered if this implied that he could not have his arm or leg cut off. He thought that the problem was that he did not yet know how to get closer to this mentor. Quartz asked, are we going? There was a portal in front of them, and he said that it was a D-rank gate. As it was said, there were D-rank monsters there. He said that they, the 4 novice hunters, would clear the place following his instructions. The girl asked in amazement, right now? The guy said they were D-rank, but according to the papers they were still F-rank. Quartz said that, of course, this is sad, but gates from rank D inclusive are intended for hunters of their rank, and why this is so was probably explained to them during familiarization. The guy turned to the girl and asked what they said. The girl shook her head. Baphomet said that they explained that F-rank dungeon monsters are easily susceptible to weapons, so hunters start training from dungeons above and including D-rank. Quartz exclaimed that he seemed to be an excellent student. The main character thought that this leader told him to memorize all the hunters' manuals in order to please the mentor. Quartz said that as he said, their clearing zone is not limited by the strength of their weapons and this is the gate starting from D-rank. He said that they don't have to worry so much, because if they remain outnumbered, the zone will be immediately cleared. Raising his index finger, he told them to take their weapons and leave. Looking at the main character, he asked if he had been provided with weapons. Baphomet pointed his finger at his fist, and Quartz asked about the fist being his weapon. He said that it was strange, because he heard that he was not from the fighter class. He said that he would go ahead so that he could slowly follow him and enter. The guy pushed the main character on the shoulder, shouting at him to move. Baphomet looked at him. The guy told him not to be arrogant, and the main character, looking at the 3 people in front of him, thought that he was wondering where he had seen them. He remembered that this was the trio who had spoken about him. They ended up in a cave. The guy rushed to the attack screaming. He slashed his sword at the lizard man and blood gushed out. Laughing, he said that he killed him. The black monster rushed at him from behind at that moment. Quartz watched as he fought off the attack. Putting his hand in his pocket, he thought that he had good strength, but his movements were too sweeping and his agility too low. The girl, stabbing him with a knife, asked why he was so impenetrable. Quartz thought that her offensive play was good, but she had enough strength. The guy missed with a fire spell, and Quartz thought that he had powerful destructive power, but almost no accuracy. He thought that all of them were missing something, unlike him. Black hair flashed in the air. The main character indifferently dodged the attack, staggering to the side, and the enemy cut off a lock of his hair. He dodged the attacks of the two monsters with quick and simple movements. The monster behind the snake eyes and the monster with the beast eyes frowned. They rushed to attack, and Baphomet dodged, ducking. Two monsters accidentally attacked each other. The main character suddenly opened his eyes. He kicked the monster in the face. Blood gushed out from the monster's head, and the main character attacked the other two monsters. He grabbed each of them by the head with his hand. He slammed their faces to the ground. Quartz looked in his direction. Baphomet, looking at his bloody hands, said that he had gotten dirty. Quartz thought he had strength, agility, and quick thinking and was just perfect. The main character turned his head towards him, and Quartz thought that among the awakened hunters, he called such talented people non-standard. He thought, is it only because he is unconventional that he can fight so skillfully? Because it is too much to consider such a simple talent. Remembering the words of Ma Xiangwu, who told him to smile and attract his attention and interest, the main character made a scary grin, trying to make a good impression. The others were breathing heavily, and Quartz said he was glad they were okay and no one was seriously injured. Baphomet thought that they had dealt with the monsters and received feedback. Gritting his teeth in irritation, he thought that all this was not fun at all, because you can catch weak monsters once or twice. Then it's boring, and he needs to do it as much as his mentor says. Looking at him, he thought that he at least wanted to fight with someone who could be on an equal footing with him. He wondered if that mentor was B-rank. Looking at his smiling face, the main character thought, at least once, it would make a strong impression on him. Deciding that this was the way, he wondered why he hadn't thought of this before. Quartz and the hunters listened. The girl asked if it would be cleared as soon as the boss of this dungeon was destroyed. The guy scratched his head and said it was strange. He asked if the condition for the boss to appear was to destroy all the normal monsters in the dungeon. Quartz said thoughtfully that, usually, yes. He suggested moving the corpses of the monsters for now. The monster's corpse left behind a trail of blood. The corpse of another monster was also transferred. The guy asked if this was enough. Quartz said that was enough. He said that there are two conditions for the boss to appear. The first is to kill all the normal monsters. Baphomet turned, noticing something. Quartz said another condition is the smell of blood. The guy asked in fear what the sudden shaking was. The girl said that the atmosphere was very strange. The monster appeared behind Quartz, and he said that when he smelled blood, he appeared already agitated. The novice hunters opened their mouths in amazement, and Quartz said that it was a death worm. The main character looked up in concentration, and Quartz said that he loved blood. The monster opened its huge mouth with numerous long red tongues, and Quartz told them to be careful so it didn't eat them. The guy, gritting his teeth, wondered if they could catch him, because he was incredibly huge. He wondered if a mentor would help them if they couldn't cope. He thought that first he needed to prepare for the attack. Kicking him in the back of the head, Baphomet told him to get out on the road. From the unexpected attack, the guy lost his balance and dropped his sword. The main character grabbed the hilt of the sword. The other guy exclaimed that he took the gun away from him. He shouted to him that he was crazy and it was suicide, because if he used someone else's weapon, his ability to kill would disappear, and this is the basis. Quartz noticed his behavior. Stretching out his hand to him, he smiled awkwardly and thought that it seemed that not only the boss, but also their newcomer was on edge, and it was impossible for him to lose his professional abilities. To his surprise, Baphomet made a high jump, swinging his sword. The guy asked in shock what this unprecedented jump power was. Quartz opened his eyes in shock. He said that he would definitely die. The main character was approaching the monster's mouth. His gaze was quite calm. The monster moved its tongues. A white flash flashed along the monster's body. Baphomet landed on the ground in front of the huge monster. The monster in front of him was immediately torn to pieces. The guy clenched his teeth in amazement, and the girl covered her face with her hands. Quartz grinned nervously. The main character, standing among the splashes of blood, looked in their direction. People always follow the strong. This is the first principle of the human world that Baphomet learned. The guy asked that he was able to deal with this monster in one blow. Frowning, he wondered if this was such a significant act. He discovered that the girl next to him was looking at the main character with loving eyes. Quartz, clapping his hands, told Baphomet that he was magnificent, and it was a matchless battle. Putting his hand in his pocket, he said that, therefore, he believed that the decision regarding Baphomet had been made. The main character, grinning, thought how he could do it. He thought that after this he would probably want to get closer to him. Quartz smiled and congratulated him on not thinking he needed his guidance anymore. Baphomet smiled smugly, then he screamed loudly in amazement. He was trembling, and Quartz said that, in case the mentor decided that he no longer needed his help in learning real combat, he could immediately begin to act as an independent hunter. He asked him to accept congratulations and said that they had not had hunters finish their practice so quickly for a long time. The main character thought that this should not be allowed. Outside, Quartz said with a smile that he would divide between them the magic stones they received from the monsters they destroyed themselves, and if they went to the control, they could exchange them for money. Baphomet shouted to him to wait, frantically turning his head and gesticulating. He said that he was not that strong, it was just that this boss was quite weak, and these guys could destroy him too. Quartz said it was written all over their faces, "This is an absolutely impossible mission for us." He said that this would be the end of their practical lesson for today. He told them that if they feel pain or any abnormalities in the body, they should go to the hospital of the appropriate institution and be sure to undergo a medical examination. Turning to the main character, he said that although their acquaintance with him was short, he had done a good job. He wished him good luck in the future. Baphomet, left behind in confusion, wondered why this happened, what he did wrong, and didn't he do it in a human way. Someone called out to him. The main character turned his head with an awkward smile. The girl, blushing slightly, asked for his phone number. Ma Xiangwon, sitting in the car, said that it was predictable. He said it couldn't have been easy. The guy with the earrings clenched his teeth. Ma Xiangwon said perhaps he assigned too difficult a task from the beginning. The main character grabbed the blade. Ma Xiangwon said that he will start simple. He said that there was one criminal hunter who needed to be dealt with immediately, and his rank was see the weapon fell from the enemy's hand. Ma Xiangwon told him to decide the punishment himself. The main character cut off the enemy's head. Ma Xiangwon described a way to get rid of corpses, move the corpse to the dungeon, complete the hunt for the dungeon boss, thereby clearing it. Cleared dungeons are automatically destroyed, so the corpse will also be destroyed. The portal behind the main character disappeared. Baphomet said that he received magic stones and would exchange them for money and fasting something tasty. He entered a dark period. The main character looked up. Turning around, Ma Xiangwon asked with a smirk if he wasn't angry. Baphomet hit the wall with his fist, leaving cracks in it. His eyes widening, he swore at Quartz. He remembered his silhouette, standing with his back. In the afternoon, Quartz said with a grin that today they would capture the D-class dungeon. The main character, sitting nearby, thought that making friends was hopeless and wrong. Adjusting his baseball cap, he thought that now there was nothing left to do but find his connection with the crime. He thought that the basics of hunting said that hunting begins first with a clear understanding and awareness of your prey. Quartz was talking to the novice hunters, and he thought, activity radius. Quartz spoke to other older people, and Baphomet thought, relationships with others. He thought that there must definitely be a connection with the crime in all this. The sun was shining on a bright multi-story residential building. The cafe worker said goodbye to the visitor. Quartz walked down the street with his hands in his pockets. The main character, watching him, irritably thought that this couldn't be true. He thought that, having learned almost everything about him, he had not found a single clue, and today he again only had a job and a home. Looking at his back, he thought that there was not a single connection with the crime, and then there was no point in such surveillance at all. Baphomet thought maybe that was why he was given instructions to befriend him. Lowering his palm, he thought that he had not tasted blood for quite some time. Imagining a blade slicing through flesh, he thought if only this area was an outlaw zone. He thought that it would have cut off his hand first, rendering him incapacitated. He imagined Quartz turning around in fear. Baphomet thought that he would then torture him to his heart's content, and, in the end, he would tell him the whole ins and outs of this crime. Imagining himself standing in front of Quartz who had fallen to the ground, he thought maybe he could do just that. Quartz suddenly opened his eyes wide. He turned around, and the main character hid around the corner. He thought that this is a human world, and that means he must approach these issues from a human point of view. Looking at the door, he thought how he could do this then. Suddenly, Quartz began to run. Baphomet watched him run away in surprise. Quartz ran out of the building. He looked around frantically. Breathing heavily, he wondered where she was. With his eyes widening, he said the name Yuhyun. The girl with shoulder-length brown hair called out to him in concern. She asked what happened, because he turned blue. Quartz asked where she went and why she didn't answer the phone. Yuhyun asked if he called. She said she was very distracted and had gone grocery shopping and apparently left her phone in the cart. She said he must have been very worried. Quartz hugged her. He was shaking and she looked at him. After telling him not to worry about her, she asked if he had hurt himself. Baphomet watched them, and Yuhyun called Quartz home and said that she would cook something delicious. Smirking, the main character said that he had found his weakness. The guy, eyes wide open, lay on the ground. Taeyun, standing among two bodies lying on the floor, took out his phone and thought that after reporting the situation to headquarters, He needed to get rid of the corpses. He glanced at his phone screen. The main character asked him if he had any ideas on how to fake an accident. Tae-yoon asked what he was talking about. After some time, Quartz ran into the room. Sweating nervously, he called out to Yoo-hyun. Yoo-hyun was treating the wound on the main character's hand. Baphomet exclaimed in amazement that it was him. Quartz asked if he saved her from the car. Yoo-hyun said that he saved her, but was wounded and flatly refused to go to the hospital, so there was nothing left to do but let him in and treat his wounds. The main character looked around the room, and Quartz asked if such accidents could happen. Yoo-hyun said in amazement that he was also a hunter. Baphomet extended his hand to the photo frame. Quartz called out to him, grabbing his wrist. After thanking him for saving his wife, he said that he wanted to ask something. He said that he would like to know the license plate number of the car that almost caused the accident. He said that it was already late, and most likely their conversation would last more than 1 minute. He suggested going outside. Yoo-hyun stopped them and with a smile asked the protagonist to have dinner with them first. Opening her eyes, she asked about him being her husband's colleague. She said that she would like to at least treat him with food as a thank you. Baphomet greedily stuffed his cheeks with food. Yoo-hyun said that he eats well and she is glad that he liked the food. She asked if she should bring him more rice. The main character nodded his head. Yoo-hyun took the empty bowls from the table. Baphomet looked at him intently. Yoo-hyun looked back at him in amazement. She asked if she should bring him anything else. The main character said no. Yoo-hyun said that she would bring more side dishes. Baphomet, looking after her, thought that the feeling of alienation he had just felt was certainly not wrong. Quartz asked him with a smile if being a hunter was right for him. The main character said that due to the fact that someone released him from practice early, it takes him a lot of effort to adapt, so he often has to listen to reproaches because of his mistakes. Quartz, laughing, said that this could not be, because he made the decision to release it for a reason, but considered it correct. He said that he could not be his mentor, but as an experienced person in this field, he could give some advice. Yoo-hyun dropped the plate on the floor. The plate broke, and Quartz, jumping up from his seat, asked if she was okay. Yoo-hyun said everything is fine. Apologizing for causing noise, she asked not to pay attention to her and continue communicating. The main character, resting his face on his palm, looked at Quartz. He said that he is a very caring husband. Grinning, Quartz asked if it was true. Looking at him, Baphomet said that this was not surprising, because he had already lost once. Quartz asked what he just said, and the main character grinned and said that he remembered the license plate number he asked earlier. He asked if he had a piece of paper so he could write it down for him. He thought that this woman was a long-dead person. Yoo-hyun's face was withered and eyeless. Quartz and Yoo-hyun have always been together, and during elementary school, and during middle school, and in high school. It seemed to him that the wedding, which he pictured only in his dreams, would link them forever. He said with a smile that he was called a traitor, cheating in the sense that when he said he worked as a hunter, she wanted to dissuade him because, although it is a cool and wonderful job, it is dangerous because it requires being on the front lines. Quartz said that they could capture high-ranking dungeons and towers, and the things they got from there would be of great value, so they could immediately become rich. Yoo-hyun asked if he could stop doing this. She said they didn't need a lot of money and all she wanted was for him to return home safe and sound. Her husband gave up the opportunity to make his name as a hunter for her sake. Yoo-hyun asked how he felt about being a mentor and maybe it was worth giving it a try. Quartz said he didn't know being a teacher was so difficult, and when he met an older rookie hunter, he almost lost his breath. Sighing, he asked when he would be able to do it as skillfully as his son. Yoo-hyun told him to brace himself because he will quickly get used to it. Quartz said this was given to all hunters, a common teleportation device that could transport a person to a designated hideout, and it would be better for her than for him. He said to use it in case of danger. The days that seemed to be peaceful forever were not so for long. There was a so-called shaking of the gates. Civilians ran away from the monsters in horror. Yoo-hyun hid around the corner of the building, sitting on the ground and covering her mouth with her hands. Remembering her husband's words, she thought that she should use now what he had given her. Yoo-hyun said that then, with the help of the device her husband gave her, he was able to escape safely. Baphomet, interrupting her, asked if this was so. He said she died that day. Yoo-hyun opened her empty eyes. As she hid around the corner, she heard the scream of a girl with a large ogre standing in front of her. A bucket of green paint spilled onto his face. Yoo-hyun grabbed the girl's hand and told her that they needed to run away now. She tripped over a ledge in the road. She fell on the asphalt. The girl asked her if she was okay. Yoo-hyun said that she was fine and they needed to hurry, because she heard that there must definitely be a shelter somewhere in the area. Among the items that fell from her bag was a teleportation device. The girl drew attention to the object. She said she knew what it was. Yu-hyun looked at her in amazement. The girl, her eyes widening nervously, apologized. Pressing a button on the device, she said that she wanted to live. The device announced that in a moment she would be moved to a designated safe place. Yu-hyun called out to her, holding out her hand. The girl immediately disappeared before her eyes. Yu-hyun's eyes widened. Behind her stood a huge monster in the form of a snake. Yu-hyun thought that she really died that day, but then why is she still alive? She wondered what her husband had done to her. Quartz looked down gloomily and a shadow fell on his face. Walking along the corridor, he remembered a conversation with a man who said that this number matched the number of the car that was rented from them. Quartz asked if he could find out the address of the client who rented the car. The man said that by law they were not allowed to provide such information, but since he was a government employee, he would make an exception specifically for him. Thinking about the address, Quartz extended his hand to the doorknob. He opened the door and walked inside. He opened his eyes in shock. Yu-hyun stood with her back to him, looking out the window. Her gaze was empty and lifeless. Quartz, sweating nervously, asked what she was doing here. He called out to Yu-hyun. Baphomet said that he thought that if he really cared so much about his wife, he would come here to catch the escaped criminal. Walking in front of him, he said that he did not know how exactly he was involved in the crime. He said at least he knows he got his price for it. Quartz tensed and furrowed his brows. The main character, placing his hands on Yu-hyun's shoulders, said that he received a dead wife. Quartz, gritting his teeth, said to take his hands off her. Baphomet, pointing to her face, said that it was strange that she became so stupid after realizing that she was dead. Quartz, lowering his head, once again told him to take his hands off her. Pinching Yu-hyun's cheek, the protagonist asked how he was able to save her and keep her in this condition. Quartz, his eyes bulging, shouted that he was warning him. Pushing Yu-hyun out the window, Baphomet said that, in any case, it was none of his business. Quartz froze in place, extending his hand forward. Sweating nervously, his face contorted in horror. He fell to the floor. The main character said that she was dead anyway. He asked if he couldn't just bring her back to life again. Looking at him, he told him to stop pretending that he was in grief and sadness. Quartz looked at him with a hostile gaze. The system reported the summoning of weapons from inventory. The blue silhouette of a weapon appeared in Quartz's hand and he cursed. Baphomet said that he must bring him back alive. A red dialogue box informed about the summoning of weapons from the inventory. The red silhouette of a knife appeared in his hand. The main character asked him to do him one favor. Smiling madly, he shouted at him to give him one of his hands. Quartz clenched his teeth in anger. A strong blow tore the door off its hinges, throwing it to the side. A cloud of dust floated in front of the doorway. The dust cloud began to clear. Baphomet with a knife and Quartz with a spear flew out of the room. The main character looked at the enemy with a cold gaze, surrounded by sparks from the battle. Quartz looked at him, gritting his teeth. He twirled the spear in his hand. He swung his spear and Baphomet blocked the blow, causing the spear to fly over his head. Quartz raised his spear upward. He hit him hard on the arm with his spear. He swung his spear in front of him, cutting through the air. Raising his hand, he swung his weapon. Quartz threw a spear at the main character. The tip of the sword was quickly approaching the spear. Baphomet frowned and blocked the attack. He pushed off the ground. Having made the jump, he began to run along the wall. Pushing off from the wall, the main character jumped into the attack. Quartz slowly turned towards him. He raised his index finger with a collected look. There was an impact behind the main character. Quartz looked at him with a fierce gaze. The protagonist's face expressed nothing. A red dialogue box informed about the summoning of weapons from the inventory. A knife appeared in Baphomet's other hand, with which he blocked the spear. He landed and the spear was in Quartz's hand. He was silent for a moment. He then said that it started in childhood. He remembered little Yu-hyun laughing. The main character jumped into the attack. Swinging his spear back, Quartz said, even as high school students. He remembered Yu-hyun's irritated face from middle school. Then he said, then high school. Baphomet frowned silently. Quartz remembered the crying Yu-hyun's face. Swinging his spear, he shouted that they were always together. He remembered how he looked at the ground in horror, saying that this could not happen. Looking at the bloody body covered with a cloth, he asked why she was here now. Kneeling down, he covered his face with his hand and said that he had given her a teleport, and if she had escaped with its help, she would have lived. Opening his eyes, from which tears were flowing, he said that this meant that someone had taken it from her. Walking along the broken road, Quartz said that this person must be in a shelter now, and no one would know if one unremarkable person died, especially when there was such a situation around. Next to his leg was a teleportation device. The device was covered in blood. Quartz looked at it. Then he looked up. There were ruins in front of him, and someone asked for help, saying that the shelter was also attacked by monsters. Quartz wondered if Yuhyun was originally destined to die. Remembering her face at the wedding, he said no, because they were always together. Yuhyun had tears of happiness on his face. A bloodied Yuhyun in a white dress lay on the asphalt, and Quartz said that they should be together, even in death. He told the main character that he knows that he shouldn't know this. A blue dialogue box indicated that the skill had been activated. He said if he died, he could take it all back. The blue dialogue box says, Sky Spear. White energy swirled around the spear in his hand and he added, along with Yuhyun. Frowning, he shouted, as before. The main character asked with aggression in his voice, so what? He swung the knife and Quartz's hand was cut off. Baphomet said that there were people like him before, scoundrels trying to arouse pity. Quartz, gritting his teeth, pressed his hand over the wound. The protagonist, towering over him, said that this fight was over when he allowed emotions to fill his blade. He looked at him silently. He angrily asked if it was for this battle that he had worked so hard for 2 long weeks. Cursing, he shouted that one of his arms would not be enough for him, and he would also give him his leg. He shouted that he would cut off all his limbs. He said the lengths to which he went to save his wife were unimportant. He shouted and asked who he was so that he could report to him. The main character said that he already told him that he is the one who catches the criminal hunters. He asked if he had talked about it. Quartz said he did nothing wrong. Baphomet looked at him and Quartz said that Yuhyun is a person who must live. The main character put his hand to his face. Quartz asked what was wrong with saving someone who should live. Baphomet asked if he was trying to justify himself. Quartz frowned, and the protagonist said that although he did not know what crime was committed, he was an accomplice in any case. He asked what he was saying when he said that he had done nothing wrong, and whether he wanted to say that he had committed no evil. Baphomet asked in disgust if he wanted to taint the very concept of evil with such a disgusting attitude. He picked up the blade of the bloody knife. Pointing a knife at him, he said that he should just be killed. Yuhyun's bloody body lay on the ground. Her hand suddenly moved. Feeling the smell of blood, she suddenly opened her eyes. A red dialogue box appeared in front of the main character's face. A blue dialogue box appeared in front of Quartz's face. The dialogue box says, Emergency. The appearance of a monster due to a system error. Hunters nearby must destroy the monster immediately. A huge blue paw was approaching Baphomet, who asked what this nonsense was. The monster's hand pierced the wall, breaking it into stone fragments. Quartz opened his mouth in amazement. In front of him stood a huge purple monster, part of which was Yuhyun. Quartz, holding the wound with his hand, asked what it was. Yuhyun's face showed nothing. The monster's huge mouth said about the smell of blood. With his mouth wide open and his eyes full, the monster shouted that he was hungry. Quartz looked at Yuhyun. Her face twisted into a disgusting smile. The monster's mouth opened wide in front of him. The protagonist asked how this lowly spawn of a monster dared to encroach on his prey. The monster's mouth was cut in half. The monster, screaming in pain, called for his mother, opening his mouth wide. Quartz called out to Yuhyun. The red dialogue box says, Baphomet's passive skill Furious Battle has been activated. The main character said it was romantic. Gritting his teeth, he asked if he still considered this creature to be his wife. The dialogue box says, in case of heavy bleeding, an effect is activated that increases all characteristics by 15%. Baphomet said that he sees her only as a monster. The monster shouted that he would kill him. The main character said that he already told him. Jumping into the attack, he said that even though he didn't know how he saved her, it was strange. Looking at the monster, he thought that he had used such evil and disgusting energy that even he was sick of it. He wondered how a man could do such a thing. As he tightened his grip on the knife, he thought that even though he didn't know who had done it, as a hobby it was simply disgusting. He landed on the monster's body. Baphomet plunged a knife into the monster's body. He began to run along the monster's body, running his knife along it. He looked up. The monster bulged its many eyes in fear. The main character uses his knife. Swinging his knife, he jumped at the monster. The tip of the knife was rapidly approaching his eyes. The monster stood motionless for some time. Blood gushed from his body. Blood gushed from 2 other places on his body. Blood gushed from different parts of the monster's body, flooding everything around, gradually coloring the field of vision completely scarlet. Baphomet, covered in blood, swung his knife, gritting his teeth. Quartz saw Yuhyun's head fly through the air. Her head fell to the floor in front of him. He called out to Yuhyun in horror. Her head was becoming shapeless. Quartz desperately screamed Yuhyun's name. The main character raised his leg under a piece of the monster, which said that he was hungry. Baphomet stomped on him with force. The red dialogue box says, people who want power pay a high price. The main character grabbed his head and clenched his teeth. The dialogue box says, the passive skill Furious Battle activates the debuff Cruelty, frantically eager to kill. His gaze went blank and he mentally cursed at debuff. Turning around, he wondered if this would change anything, because it didn't matter at all. Running towards Quartz with a knife in his hand, he thought that he was going to kill him anyway. Approaching him, Baphomet thought that if he wanted to continue living without letting her go in any way, then he would better immediately kill him personally. He thought that then they could spend the rest of their lives together in hell. He thought it would kill him. A red dialogue box indicated that a threat to the system had been detected. It reported that the system was blocked, and the main character fell to the floor. The dialogue box says, the danger level for the human shell has reached 99% due to excessive use of skills. Baphomet wondered why his body wasn't moving. The dialogue box says, all bodily abilities and skills are suspended until the danger level is reduced to an acceptable level. The main character wondered in amazement who decided this. Quartz, rising to his feet, said that it was him. Turning around angrily, he said, if not for him. Baphomet, gritting his teeth, thought that he had done everything. Quartz said that it would be better if he pretended he didn't know anything and left them alone. Then both of them and Yuhyun wouldn't be in this situation. The main character thought that he just needed delicious food now. Squeezing the handle of his spear, Quartz said it was his fault. Baphomet wondered if he was doing this on purpose to put him in a hopeless position. Hitting with a spear, Quartz shouted to him to die. A dialogue box appeared in front of the main character. The dialogue box says, incorrect. I care about you more than anyone else. Baphomet looked up in amazement. Someone waved their leg. Ma Xiangwon appeared next to them and raised his leg. Baphomet looked at him in amazement. Quartz's mouth opened in shock. Ma Xiangwon apologized to Quartz by kicking him against the wall. He said he would lose consciousness for a while. After hitting the wall, Quartz actually lost consciousness. Na fell face down on the floor. Ma Xiangwon said that there is a lot of chaos here. Looking at a piece of Yuhyun's body, he said that he seemed to have found strong evidence of his mentor's involvement in the crime. Putting his hands in his pockets, he said that, of course, it turned out a little messy and noisy, but nevertheless everything worked out. He told Baphomet to leave the rest to them, and he did a good job. Baphomet quietly said that he could have killed him. Ma Xiangwon asked what he said. The main character thought that he should have killed him before the leader arrived. He thought, if only it weren't for this system window that tormented him. Then he thought there was something else wrong. Ma Xiangwon asked that the blood he was doused with was not all his. With his eyes wide open, Baphomet thought that if he were stronger, he would have killed him already. Ma Xiangwon asked about how he was so seriously injured that he couldn't move. The main character said, at least a hand. He shouted to give him your hand. Lanterns illuminated the city at night, and Ti-Yun asked how Cha Min-woo was doing. Ma Xiangwon said that he kept repeating about the hand, so he gave him a sedative and sent him in an ambulance. He asked what was wrong with that man. Ti-Yun said that this situation caused a stir, so he could not do anything about alerting the hunters of the danger at that moment. He said that there were several hunters hanging around nearby, and he said something to them and sent them away from the scene. Ma Xiangwon rested his chin on his palm and said that they all came because of the system alert. The blue dialogue box says, emergency. The appearance of a monster due to a system error. Hunters nearby must destroy the monster immediately. Ma Xiangwon asked what kind of ability it is that turns not a living person, but a corpse into a monster. He said that it would be possible to say for sure only after all the checks and studies. He asked Quartz, sitting in the back seat, if he knew anything about it. Turning around, Ma Xiangwon said that his dead wife had become a monster. He asked who was behind the rescue of his wife. Looking down, Quartz was silent for a while. He said that he had only heard rumors about the possible emergence of a department to catch criminal hunters. He said that he did not think that they would take responsibility for his work, and they were following a difficult and lonely path. Ma Xiangwon said that this was indeed the case, but he must with his own hands investigate the affairs of those whom he had known about for so long and punish them. He asked him to tell who was behind this. He asked who he was, since he gave him all the information about the rookie hunters. The car was driving along the road, and Ma Xiangwon said that some of his charges, the rookie hunters, had been found dead or missing, both female and male hunters, if he was right, and he passed on information about new hunters in exchange for the life of his wife. This is a serious crime. He looked at him, turning around. Quartz looked down silently. Ma Xiangwon said that it looked like he wasn't going to say anything now. Ti-Yun, noticing something, looked down. He pressed the brake pedal. He said it looked like their brakes had suddenly failed. Ma Xiangwon exclaimed in amazement. A monster with purple eyes appeared behind Quartz. He said that this hunter would be difficult to catch, and Ma Xiangwon turned around. The monster's mouth opened around Quartz's head and he wished him luck with that. Ma Xiangwang exclaimed loudly, and Ti-Yun, looking forward, frowned and cursed. The car, out of control, was speeding down the road. A monster with purple eyes emerged from under the overturned car. It began to change color and shape. Turning into a red cat, he stretched. He walked away from the overturned smoking car. The cat jumped into the open window. There was a tablet on the table. The cat jumped on him and his screen turned on. The cat jumped off the tablet. There was information about the person on the tablet screen. This was information about the main character. Baphomet, with his head bandaged, wondered what this oppressive sensation was. Slowly opening his eyes, he thought that he could not breathe freely. The white cat was sleeping on it. Looking at the cat on his stomach, the main character wondered what kind of animal it was. Someone opened the curtain, and Baphomet thought that he had already seen this white cat somewhere. A woman with round glasses asked that number 302 had already gotten up. She said he woke up even faster than she thought. The main character, covered in cold sweat, thought that there was only one person who called him that. The woman smiled and asked if he was doing well. Placing her finger on his chest, she said that he was still just as handsome. The scene in which she told him to pay with her body again appeared before Baphomet's eyes. He screamed very loudly. The woman caught the cat that had jumped off him in her hands. Approaching him, she asked if he could move. She said he was in quarantine and must be having a hard time moving. The main character, cursing, asked what this quack doctor was doing here. The woman said that this is her hospital, and he also owes her a lot. She asked if he remembered already. Baphomet shouted that he knew nothing. The woman said that she was very surprised, and he is rumored to be working with Ma Xiangwu. She said that she did not think that he was the type to work under someone else's direction. But it turned out to be the opposite, and it was unexpected for her. The main character asked if she knew the leader. The woman said, a little. Then she licked her lips. Placing her foot on his stomach, she asked how his body seemed to be getting even better. Baphomet shouted at her to remove her hands. The woman objected that she was touching him with her foot, not her hand. The main character shouted that this time everything was different. He had become stronger, and this time he would not let her get away with it so easily. The woman asked what he was talking about when he couldn't even move. Gritting his teeth, Baphomet asked what else she planned to do with his body. The woman asked what he was saying, because if someone heard, they might misunderstand them. She asked what she did to him. The main character doesn't pretend she doesn't know anything. The woman said with a smile that the only one who doesn't know anything here is number 302. She asked if she should tell him this time. Moving closer to his face, she said that in this enclosed space it was just him and her. A girl with long brown hair with a hair clip sat at the table, looking at the phone. Someone said hello and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He asked if Cha Min-woo was inside. The girl said that he had not visited them for a long time. She said he was in, but he was in bad shape and it seemed like something happened to him. Suddenly they heard a loud scream. Ma Xiangwang asked what happened. The woman with glasses laughed loudly. The main character was lying on the floor. The woman happily said that making fun of number 302 was very fun. Ma Xiangwang asked what was going on here. Baphomet asked if he wanted to deceive him. Ma Xiangwang frowned and asked, what? The main character said irritably that this charlatan said that she knew him. He asked if she had not originally conspired to make him a government dog. Ma Xiangwang asked if the main character has an illness and if he lives in a world where everything revolves around him. He said that in the past, when there was no concept of a guild, he and she were colleagues, toiling together through thick and thin. The main character thought in amazement that this charlatan was a hunter. Ma Xiangwang added that they have been involved with the government from the very beginning. He said that this hospital is a government institution and as far as he knows, the government wanted to test his strength but did not get the desired results. So they decided to lock him up in this hospital. Baphomet, cursing, said that they had mixed up again. He asked why the government was interested again. Ma Xiangwang, lowering his head, said that his question was not long in coming. After a short silence, he said that Quartz was dead. The main character opened his eyes in amazement. Ma Xiangwang said that he was killed by whoever was behind him. He said that since his body was in the middle of the road, there was a high probability that a civilian would accidentally pass by and be pulled in. He said that he tried to minimize the damage as much as possible and extract at least some clues from Quartz's corpse. But they only got half-eaten pieces of the corpse. Ma Xiangwang said that he saw a monster similar to the one they were dealing with, and it is supposed to be a hunter who has magic. can revive dead bodies, and has the skill of transporting dead spirits. He said that if they investigate everyone who might be connected to this, he is confident that they will definitely find the one who killed Quartz. Baphomet irritably asked if he was joking, because he would rather kill him himself than let him die so senselessly. Putting the bandage on the table, he asked that after such hellish work, he, like a dog, had brought it to him. But he simply missed such a possibility. Ma Xiangwang said that he was very sorry about this. The main character then told him to give him this unknown hunter and let him deal with him. Ma Xiangwang said that this is nonsense, and with his skills he simply cannot catch him. He said that even he could not figure out his secret plan and intentions, and everything was so thought out that he would assume the likelihood of him being an S-rank. Baphomet said that he simply did not have enough abilities for such a thing. He said that if it were him, he would immediately notice everything, figure it out, and then shake everything out of the mentor. Ma Xiangwang said that he doesn't see boundaries at all. Grabbing him by the collar, he asked if he thought this was fun, and if he was going to catch an unknown hunter. Pulling him towards him, he asked through clenched teeth, having a B rank. The main character left the room. Ma Xiangwang, leaving the room, irritably shouted at him to stop. Baphomet gave him the middle finger. He didn't even look in his direction. Clenching his fist in irritation, Ma Xiangwang said that he had a disgusting character. The woman asked if they had gotten into a fight. Rubbing his head, Ma Xiangwang said that they just hurt each other and took out their anger. The woman asked what he was talking about. Ma Xiangwang asked her if it was true that she extorted money from Cha Min-woo under the pretext of treatment. Placing a finger to her lips, the woman asked if such a thing had happened. Putting the phone to his ear, Ma Xiangwang said that this should be reported to the police. The woman told him to listen because there are reasons. She said the government once brought a bloodied young man to her hospital. They told her to decide for herself whether to save him or kill him. The woman said that when she looked at him, she realized that he was a celebrity whom she had seen on television, and that the government wanted to make him a hero hunter, but failed miserably. Frowning, she said that such hunters last for a day or two, and then they are thrown away as if they were spoiled. Ma Xiangwang told her to watch her words. He folded his arms across his chest and said that he was also a government dog. The woman smiled and asked if that was so. She said she wasn't sure if he was really a government dog or a wolf hiding his true identity. She asked herself where she stopped and what happened next. The nurse told her that this patient was hopeless and it was a miracle that he was still hanging on. The woman said that during treatment the patient must have strength so that the body can get out, but in his case this is unlikely. At that moment something happened. A red system window that she had never seen before appeared before her eyes. Ma Xiangwang asked, "Isn't it blue?" The woman said that this also surprised her, but what was more striking was the message from the system. The red dialogue boxes say, "Save him at all costs, otherwise you will die." The woman said that was why she then did everything in her power to save number 302. She said to herself, "Kim Yu-seong, that day you simply outdid yourself." Ma Xiangwang asked that it was not a mission message or an urgent threat message, but a system window that actually threatened her. Kim Yu-seong said she was talking about the same thing. She asked him if he thought she had done the right thing, because if she wanted to know more about number 302, there must be something connecting her with him. She said that is why she decided to demand repayment of a non-existent debt from him. Ma Xiangwang frowned and thought that this meant that the system had its own self and was threatening her. He thought that previously they did not have even a shred of information about the existence of such a phenomenon. Looking down, Kim Yu-seong said that it was even romantic. She said that the system seemed to passionately love and protect number 302. The main character was at home. Tae-yoon said that he was in quarantine and generally needed some rest, so he was told to spend some time doing just that. Baphomet stood with his arms folded on his chest, and Tae-yoon told him not to worry so much, because all hunters experience this condition at least once. He told him to consider this time a vacation and do what he could not do before, enjoying his time to the fullest. He remembered asking Ma Xiangwang if they should continue to follow Cha Min-woo like before. Ma Xiangwang said yes. Raising a finger, he said to do it a little differently this time, watch and protect. He said that if the mentor had already given the unknown information about Baphomet, then they simply could not exclude the possibility that he might be in danger. Turning around, Tae-yoon told the main character that they would contact him when the next orders were given. Baphomet asked where he got these jokes from. Piercings appeared on the ears of the main character. Sitting at a table full of meat, he thought that in order to cope well with the next battle, he needed a good rest, and, on reflection, he came to the conclusion that not much time had passed since he became a man. But in the intervening time he had become so and couldn't really enjoy it all. To begin with, he decided to eat well. Raising his hand, he asked for 2 more cups of rice and 5 servings of meat. Baphomet took pictures of the cakes and pastries on his phone. He walked down the street, munching on snacks. He looked at one of the signs. The wooden bat hit the ball. The main character thought about all the activities he could do in downtown Seoul. He was reading a book while sitting in a chair. Chewing popcorn, he watched a movie sitting in the first row of the cinema. A man with long black hair, dressed as a ghost, demanded that his leg be released. Baphomet stood indifferently in front of him. Running after him in pursuit, he shouted to him to give him his hand. A girl in a white t-shirt sang in front of a microphone. She sang while playing the guitar. The main character looked at her, standing among other passers-by. He turned away. A shadow fell over his face and he mentally cursed. Baphomet thought, no matter what he does, being in such a weak body, nothing gives him pleasure. He wondered if his desire to become human had been a mistake. He thought no. The main character thought, even if I lost all the power I had. He thought that the power could be regained again. He thought that this was not it. Baphomet thought, maybe because falling from the top to the bottom is very sad. A red dialogue box appeared in front of him. He opened his eyes in amazement. The red dialogue box had a simple question. Are you sad? Covering his face with his hand, the main character laughed and said that he would go crazy like that. He angrily asked that it was all because of it, and now it was pretending to try to help him. He shouted, asking why it had made such a mess around him and confused him, and why it was doing this. The red dialogue box had the answer, everything is for you. Gritting his teeth, Baphomet said that it just wanted to torment him. A woman's hand typed on the keyboard, and he said that her goal was to deceive and put him in such a position. Then she succeeded. The system announced the launch of the protocol. The main character asked what she would do next. The system reported that at the moment the number of starts is 13-digit, and in the event of a repeated failure, the program will need to be restructured. Baphomet asked if she would interfere with him again. The girl with long hair said, it's neglected. The main character said, if he is right, it is better to kill him with your own hands right now. The girl said that this time everything will work out. Baphomet shouted to kill him better. The system reported the successful launch of the hacking program and congratulated the administrator. The system reported that the breakdown of the Earth system would now begin. The ball was surrounded by many precise lines. The main character opened his mouth in amazement. The world around him froze and lost color. The girl, appearing next to him, apologized. She had black hair and bright red eyes. She said that the system on this Earth was not created by her, so she was a little late. A girl with short hair and the same red eyes asked him not to misunderstand. Another girl said with a smile that she didn't hate him at all. She said that now she can tell him why she took his power from him. A white silhouette appeared in front of him. Baphomet looked at the silhouette. The girl with white hair smiled. A girl in a white dress, with white hair and red eyes appeared in front of him. Looking at him, she smiled and opened her mouth. The main character exclaimed in amazement. Snapping her fingers, the girl said that finally, after hundreds of millions of attempts, she was able to show him her appearance. They ended up in the violet space, and she said that she also conducted hundreds of millions of virtual experiments to find out what would happen if you put him in a human vessel and endowed that vessel with his powers. The main character's body appeared under her hand, and she said that the result of these many tests was death. She said the body was torn into pieces or pierced through. The girl said that the fact of death remained unchanged, so she took a different path. She asked what would happen if you didn't give him his strength. Approaching him, she said that the result was unknown, and the tests showed nothing, so she decided to wait for the result, which she could not know in advance. Baphomet asked if she expected it from him. The girl said yes, because he would satisfy her desire, and then he called her in that tower. They remembered how the demon Baphomet stood in the tower, raising his head up. Hunter Baphomet opened his eyes. Lowering his head, he asked with a grin that God had indeed granted his wish. Raising his head, he asked who had killed him all these millions of times. Grabbing the girl, he asked if she was the one who was stronger than him. The girl smiled and said that she was waiting for him to say this. She moved her palm and several squares appeared behind her. She said that these were beings that he would never have defeated with his original strength. The girl said that he should become stronger, much stronger than before. One of the silhouettes stood with his head bowed. Raising his head, he opened his 2 eyes of different colors wide. The main character looked back at him. Then he opened his eyes wide. The black squares were gathering into a human shape. The hunter with white hair stood with his back to him. Turning around, he looked at him with blue eyes. Baphomet wondered what Raven was doing here. The girl, hugging him from behind, said that he knew how he could become stronger. She said with a smile that his greedy passion would make him stronger. The protagonist's face became sweaty and she told him to keep thirsting because that was the source of his strength. She said, "Let everyone tremble with fear and horror when they hear your name." By launching Administrator Protection, Baphomet's skill list has changed. The Weapon Master skill has increased to the 2nd level. The skill level of the first weapon used has increased to 100%. Passive ability Furious Battle has been upgraded to passive ability Adrenaline. Also, the Brutality debuff no longer applies. The system reported the acquisition of skills one after another. Everything is the way he wanted. People again began to move around the main character. Baphomet looked around in bewilderment. He asked about everything coming back. A red dialogue box appeared in front of him. He looked at the dialogue box in amazement. The lights in the hospital windows were turned on. Ma Xiangwon, holding up a small bag, said that he would like to study it. Kim Yu-seong asked if this was the sample of the monster caught by number 302. Ma Xiangwon said yes, and he wanted to ask her to investigate the composition of this sample. Kim Yu-seong agreed and said that it was not difficult for her. She asked if it would suit him if she finished by tomorrow. Ma Xiangwon thanked her. He looked at the piece of paper. Kim Yu-seong said that she did some research on number 302's body. She said that he knows what she is capable of, and even just by feeling a person, she can get data. Ma Xiangwon said he thinks the data is wrong. Kim Yu-seong annoyedly asked what he was saying and if he didn't believe in her abilities. Ma Xiangwon said that this was impossible, because the skill statistics were not like that when first measured. Sweating nervously, he asked about the fact that less than a month had passed since he became a hunter, and his ability statistics had increased tenfold. The main character opened his mouth in amazement. He started laughing nervously. The red dialogue box says, Hidden Quest Kara Raven, Apostle of Wrath is complete. Reward, Raven's special skill. Baphomet said it was an interesting twist. The hunter's ability stats are an indicator of his power level. Depending on the numerical value, the hunter is assigned to one of the ranks from S to F. The numerical value of the characteristics increases even just by the fact that the hunter breathes. But there is a significant difference between hunters who strive for strength and make efforts for this, and those who doesn't try. There are two ways to quickly increase the numerical values of characteristics. The main way is to hunt monsters. The second is independent training. In addition, it is said that some hunters have a secret way to increase their stats. However, these are just rumors. The presence of such a capability has not been confirmed. Baphomet and Ma Xiangwon were sitting at the table opposite each other. Kim Yu-seong stood nearby. Ma Xiangwon, adjusting his glasses, said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He asked how he was doing. The main character, picking his ear with his middle finger, said, "Okay." Ma Xiangwon irritably asked if he had been doing something stupid all this time. Baphomet asked why pretend like they didn't know anything, because they were watching him. Kim Yu-seong said that they are both adults but act like children. Ma Xiangwon turned around and nodded. Kim Yu-seong's eyes widened. Placing her hand on the main character's shoulder, she told him not to be angry, because the leader was very sorry. Baphomet demanded to remove his hands. The blue dialogue box says, using the identification skill. Kim Yu-seong asked why he was so rude, since their relationship is not that bad. The system reported an analysis of information about the enemy. The main character asked what she was talking about. Slapping him on the back, Kim Yu-seong exclaimed that he was rude. Baphomet loudly called her a charlatan. Kim Yu-seong whispered that, as she expected, his performance was above average. Ma Xiangwon asked if something happened since he contacted him first. The main character thought that the leader had more information about the hunters than anyone else. He thought that if he could get this information through the leader, he could prepare. He wondered if this meant that their connection and meeting with the leader was determined from the beginning, and this woman made him a puppet for her own purpose. The red dialogue boxes say, you will also benefit from this, right? You will kill a strong opponent who killed you. This is a very attractive offer for you. Baphomet, clicking his tongue, thought that it looked like she was now going to openly tell and whisper to him what to do. The red dialogue box says, I can now freely interfere with the Earth system. The main character, folding his hands on his chest, mentally told her, if she has such outstanding abilities, to deal with this herself. The system answered no. Ma Xiangwon looked at him blankly. The red dialogue boxes say, sorry, but I have neither the ability to create nor destroy anything. I can only take away. The main character asked how she made him human then. The girl, after a short silence, said that this was also stolen. Ma Xiangwon, resting his face on his palm, asked what he wanted to say, because he was already tired of waiting for an answer. Baphomet said that he wanted to know if there was a job for him. Ma Xiangwang said no, because the gate does not generate criminals. Scratching his head, the main character said that he felt sorry for wasting time just waiting, and perhaps for now he should focus on the hunter's tasks. Ma Xiangwang said that he would not mind it until a new target appeared. Baphomet asked if he understood him, because that incident could lead to more serious problems. Ma Xiangwang grinned and said that they had already left this matter. He thought that he was curious about how quickly the extraordinary could develop their abilities, and whether their abilities could really be useful to him. He proposed to do this. If they find out the identity of who is behind this, they will transfer this case to him so that he can deal with it. The main character looked at him carefully, and Ma Xiangwang said that he, in turn, must become strong enough to do this. In the office, the main character demanded to give him an assignment. He shouted to the girl to give him an assignment, if possible, preferably to the tower area, and to give him a weapon. The girl said that usually F-rank hunters do not have tower-related assignments. She asked if he wanted to borrow the gun again. She asked why not buy or select a weapon suitable for a hunter, since the cost of renting a weapon is not so small. Baphomet objected that he was not interested in using one weapon all the time. He asked if there really were no tasks for him. The girl said that usually hunters of rank A and above can attack the tower. She said that there is one task related to the tower in which rank is not important. The main character smiled, and the girl said that only hunters belonging to other guilds could participate. Baphomet thought he already belongs to the guild. Looking away, he thought that he couldn't say that he was part of an unofficial government guild. The girl said that he is a member of the guild. The main character froze. He asked, what? White clouds floated across the blue sky. The labyrinth tower rose on the ground. A girl with long hair, holding a microphone in her hand, greeted the hunters and said that the Ark Guild was speaking to them. She said that, as they probably all already know, their guild has a monopoly on the labyrinth tower. But since the risk of the so-called gate shock cannot be ruled out, they plan to start clearing the tower from today. The guy asked what happened to the Ark Guild, which usually loves money. The girl added that they were giving up the exclusive right. The girl from the guild said that they would give 90% of the loot and trophies from the tower cleaning that began today to the hunters, but the guild would deal with the boss. The guy asked if this meant that they themselves would clear the boss, and the head of the guild would do this. Another guy asked if that other hunter wasn't more famous than the head. The girl asked what it meant that Hunter would clean up. She said she was a fan of his. The main character clenched his teeth in irritation, running his hand through his hair. He thought maybe he should go back after all, since he wasn't in the mood to fight at all. The red dialogue box says, "Is this because of what I found out in the hunter's department?" Baphomet mentally told her to shut up and not talk to him about it. He thought that, in fact, there was nothing wrong with it at all. It says on the red dialogue boxes, "Yes, there is nothing special about this. Stop being so hot-tempered already and let's think positively. In any case, thanks to this you can enter the tower." The main character wondered if there was some function to block it. The dialogue boxes say, "It's also not very good that you attract attention because of your short-tempered and irritable nature. You could become their target." Baphomet, gritting his teeth, asked if she was his mother. The girl from the system asked how he knew that she was his mother. The main character closed his eyes. Cursing, he accidentally hit the armor of a guy passing by. He punched through his armor and the guy exclaimed in shock. He asked what he was doing. Another guy asked if he was okay. The red-haired girl asked why it was so noisy and if someone was quarreling. The girl with black hair said that for a place where hunters gather, this is completely normal. The red-haired girl looked forward. Looking at Baphomet, she thought that she had already seen him somewhere. The guy in the armor asked if he knew how much it cost and if he understood how long it took to ship by plane. He asked how he would pay for his mistake. The guy irritably asked if he was listening to him at all. The main character wondered if there were such people everywhere. He thought he was tired. Sighing, he said that it would not be easy to pay for this. The guy asked irritably what this lazy and annoying behavior was all about. The guy whispered to him that, no matter how you look at it, he looks like a completely ordinary guy. He told him to look at his appearance, because the condition and quality of the equipment is unsightly and leaves much to be desired. He said that he had heard that F-rank hunters were also placed on missions in the towers as volunteers, and it seemed like he was one of those people. The guy with an arrogant grin asked him how the F-rank hunter would pay. He asked if hunters of that rank didn't only go to the lowest rank dungeons and do meaningless work. He asked why such a weakling came to the tower. Baphomet grabbed the guy's face with his hand. He told him to keep saying whatever he wanted and he would show him how humiliating it was to die at the hands of a weakling. The girl asked what he was doing. She asked if they had come here to fight in front of a tower full of their enemies. She told everyone to follow her. The guy in the armor said that he turned his equipment into this. Baphomet said that he still needed to break his mouth. Another guy asked if she wasn't a member of the Ark Guild, and how could they choose a low-ranking hunter who didn't even know his place and boundaries to participate in such an event. The girl said that this event is for everyone. They stopped and turned around. She said that there are 3 doors in the maze tower. Only after they go through these doors into the rooms and clear them, the boss room will open. She said that there will be 6 hunters assigned to each entrance. Each door has its own feature, and there are cards that will be considered protected under the only condition of destroying the monster. The girl said that there are cards in which you first need to unseal the monster by solving a puzzle, and then clear it. She said that there are trap cards, and after they avoid all the traps, the monster will wait for them at the entrance. Then they will kill it and go to the next room. Raising his hand, the guy said he had a question. He asked which map they would go to. The girl said with a smile that she didn't know. She said that the rooms would change randomly within 24 hours from the starting point after entering the tower, and she did not know which one they would get. She said that, as already said, this is a labyrinth tower. She suggested checking that everyone was there before they entered. The main character yawned boredly. The girl called out to a hunter from the Node Guild. Baphomet immediately turned pale. The girl continued to name people in their guilds. She called out to the Reaper from the Defiance Guild, and a girl with dark hair tied in a braid, looking at the main character, called out. The girl called out to Baphomet from the Sweet Pink Angel Guild. The main character turned pale and broke out in a cold sweat. Silence fell between them. Hearing laughter, Baphomet looked towards the source of the sound. The Reaper looked at him, barely holding back her laughter. Kim Yuseong asked about him placing number 302 in her guild. She said that it was a ghost guild created to make money from the government, and the only members of this guild were her and the head nurse. Taking a sip from the mug, she asked if he had told the 302nd in advance that he wanted to enroll him in the guild. Ma Xiangwung said that he still has no choice since it was originally owned by the government. Laughing, Kim Yuseong asked if he didn't think the title suited him at all. Ma Xiangwung laughingly said that this is why he has been simply ignoring his numerous angry calls since yesterday. The guy in armor, laughing, shouted that the name of the guild suited him very well. Baphomet stood irritably, surrounded by laughter. Looking up, he thought that he would definitely kill the leader. The girl offered to go if they were finished. She added that the Ark Guild is not responsible for their lives during this event, because what happens during the battle, each hunter must endure and cope with himself. The shadow hid the protagonist's eyes, and the girl said that she was opening the doors. The huge doors opened in front of them, and 6 people walked inside. In front of them was a dark stone room. The Reaper said it was very quiet here. The girl from the guild said that this is not a hunting map. She said that she would try using the lighting stone. She said that if there is a monster in such a free space, then it is a trap map. The light illuminated the huge armor standing in the room. The girl asked if everyone knew how to clear cards with traps. Turning around, she told the others to follow her and she would go first. She told Baphomet not to waste his strength and just follow her. Frowning, she ran forward. She stepped on one of the stone slabs. The floor under her foot immediately disappeared. Standing on the next slab, the girl thought that the first trap had been opened. Having dodged many arrows, she thought that the second trap had been opened. Something flashed behind her. Doing a somersault in the air, she dodged the lightning strike and thought that the third trap had also been opened. Noticing something, she opened her eyes wide. Turning around, she thought that only the Reaper who had received a rank was following her, because no one else could. Looking back, she saw Baphomet running. To her bewilderment, he ran past her, overtaking her. The red dialogue boxes say, Baphomet's special skill, Transcendence. When entering battle in a tower below the legendary level, all capture strategies are revealed, including dishonest and evil ones. Only for him. The interface pointed to the armor ahead, warning of danger, and the protagonist thought about trying out the skill as he approached it. The guy in the armor watched in bewilderment. The first floor was cleared. The guy opened his mouth in amazement. The 5th floor has been cleared. The guy, gritting his teeth, sweated nervously. Looking at Baphomet, he thought that he had an F rank. Many arrows were approaching the main character. The system told him to watch out for the barrage of arrows. Baphomet turned around with his eyes glowing red. The system told him that he could easily dodge if he jumped. The main character did just that. The system informed him that 50 meters to the right it was raining arrows. It told him to move his whole body sharply to the side. Baphomet caught one of the arrows with his hand. The system informed him that this was also a good way to distract the attention of satellites. The main character threw an arrow at a knight in armor. The arrow was approaching the knight's head. Swinging his sword, he cut the arrow in half. Steel chains surrounded him. The system informed Baphomet that his weak point was his neck. Standing behind the knight, the main character wrapped chains around his neck. He looked back wildly. The knight's neck was chained. Suddenly Baphomet jumped into the attack, striking with his axe. He smiled enthusiastically. The system said, "I hope you had a good hunt." With a blow from the axes, the main character cut the armor into pieces. The 15th floor was cleared. The Reaper asked if he wasn't F rank. The girl with brown hair asked if maybe he just hadn't updated the information. The Reaper, thoughtfully closing one eye, said that she had the feeling that he knew everything, but was hiding it. The girl asked the main character if he didn't know that if he didn't update his rank, he would have to pay a fine. The guy in armor stood shaking with anger. He asked if they came here to get some air. The two girls turned around. The guy said that they didn't have time to talk, and they needed to quickly move to the next floor. The girl asked if she didn't say that everyone was exhausted. She said that they would rest, put their equipment in order and go to the next floor. The guy asked that they had only climbed to the 15th floor, and they were already tired. He said that the Ark is a very famous guild, but it greatly disappointed him. The girl was silent for a moment, looking at him with a raised eyebrow. Calling him Hunter Pagan, she asked if he thought he needed to get his weapons in order since his armor was broken. Pagan said he already said it was because of him. The girl said that if an F-rank hunter could destroy his armor, we could conclude that its quality was poor. Pagan asked what she was talking about since his armor was made from the core of the Sanctuary Tower boss Bahamut. Looking at the main character, the girl said that then it can be said that an F-rank hunter is capable of breaking a boss with the strength equal to Bahamut. The main character silently looked away. Pagan shouted in amazement and annoyance that he was only an F-rank. The guy in armor called out to him. He said that he believed that there was no point in protesting to this Ark Guild member anymore, and he would be able to show his skills in the next tower. Reaper thought that, as she expected, it is not that she saw and remembered the crest incorrectly, and it is royal gold. She said this armor is fake. The guys turned around. Baphomet looked at the Reaper. The Reaper bent down in front of Pagan with a smile. She said that items related to Bahamut's core had never been sold openly, but if someone said they bought such an item, did that mean the sale was done illegally? Pagan couldn't answer, so Kan's secretary asked what she wanted. The Reaper smiled contentedly. She said she could catch this scammer. She asked if they could fulfill her request in return when they left the tower. The Reaper fought with furrowed brows, surrounded by glowing blue threads. Blue threads floated in the air around the walking armor. It immediately fell apart. The armor with swords jumped at her to attack. The main character looked in her direction in amazement. The Reaper gritted her teeth slightly as she jumped. There were a lot of blue threads behind her, and the monster was cut into pieces. There was a crazy smile on her face. White clouds floated across the sky above the tower. The main character and the others ran along the stone floor of the tower. The sky turned orange. Baphomet drank from a bottle while the others discussed something. The first stars became visible in the sky. The knight sat on a red dragon. Pagan ran to the attack with a sword in his hands. Suddenly someone jumped past him. The main character cut off the dragon's head and sat on its neck. Pagan clenched his teeth in irritation. The 49th floor was cleared. The girl with brown hair exclaimed tiredly that they were finally able to make it to the 49th floor. Pagan, breathing heavily, said that it was only the 49th floor. He asked if this was all they could do. The girl asked, puffing out her cheeks, if he really thought his words would hurt her. Pagan looked at the main character. He wondered why he wasn't exhausted at all. There was a large door in front of them, and the Reaper said that conditions would change further. Baphomet looked at her. She said that this is usually the boss room, but due to the nature of this labyrinth tower, she can guess that a monster with skills half the power of the final boss is waiting for them. Turning to the main character, she asked that she seemed to be mistaken when she thought that he had experience of illegally entering and exiting such towers and that this was familiar to him. She said that she realized this when she saw that he was not aware of the boss. Baphomet asked what she even knew about him. The Reaper, grinning, said that he was rude. The girl stopped them and told them to go and rest. She said that just like the Reaper said, there was a monster waiting for them ahead, and it would probably be different from the monsters they had met before. They approached the door. The girl touched the door with her hand. A shadow fell on her face, and she said that this was not a threat, but advice. She said that those who now want to leave this place can go. Turning around, she said that although she had previously said that they themselves were responsible for their own lives, she also did not want to see someone die next to her. She said that they don't have to worry about the spoils, they will allocate as agreed. Pagan looked down nervously. The main character said that he didn't care and would go to the next room, because he came here because he wanted to be side by side with strong people. The Reaper said that she would also go with them, because it would be a pity to abandon everything at such a stage. The hooded man said he was coming too. The girl asked what about Pagan and Saul. Saul told Pagan that he didn't need to continue by force because he only came here to accumulate experience points. He said that, just like the huntress said, they don't know what dangers await them next, so stopping at this point would be wise. Pagan looked at the main character, his face contorted with anger. Gritting his teeth, he said that he could not lose to this rude and arrogant scoundrel who was pretending to be an F-rank. Stepping forward, he said that he would also continue. The room was pitch dark. They said it was also very dark and quiet this time. The girl said that she uses a glowing stone. The stone glowed green. They found huge stone chess pieces in front of them. Someone asked if these were stone statues, if they could be a gargoyle. Someone said that if it really is a gargoyle, then it is better not to come close. Pagan shouted irritably that it was chess. The others exclaimed that it really looked like the shape of chess pieces. A huge hand raised a huge pawn. The hand placed the chess piece on the board, and the others covered their faces with their hands from the strong wind. The girl narrowed one eye, and someone spoke. The Reaper clenched her teeth. The hand, pointing at them, said, "Now it's your turn." Someone asked what it was and if he told them. Saul tensed. He told Pagan that this was his chance to show off his skills because he was good at chess. Pagan exclaimed that he had figured out how to win and all he had to do was figure out where the pieces could be placed and avoid them. He looked around the chess field and pointed his finger at one of the squares. Standing on the black cage, he called everyone here and said that this was a safe zone. Saul said he was confident in him. Baphomet said that this was wrong. Saul's eyes snapped open. He called out to Pagan, on whom a huge chess piece was falling. Pagan raised his head up in amazement. Saul pushed him out from under the chess piece and was crushed to death. The Reaper and the girl immediately turned pale. Sweating nervously, Pagan called out to Secretary Khan. The Reaper stood silently. The girl with brown hair exclaimed in bewilderment. She asked why the white piece suddenly made a move. The Reaper said that this means that when they passed the line, they were not meant. With her eyes widening, she said that chess was originally a strategy game for two players, and they were flies caught in a game on a chessboard. Two moves were made on the chessboard. Baphomet said they said it was peaceful here. He said with a grin that this was the real tower. Blood was splattered on the floor. Pagan slammed his hand onto the ground. He told Khan's secretary that he would pull him out and they would bring in all the medical professionals in their company. He raised his hand, but to his horror, it was torn off. He screamed loudly, and the girl with brown hair opened her mouth. She grabbed it and pulled it out from under the chess piece. She shouted at him to pull himself together if he wasn't going to die. The Reaper, gritting her teeth, looked up. They dodged the white pawn. Raising her head, she found another chess piece approaching her. Jumping to the side, she thought that the speed of movement was gradually increasing. With her eyes bulging, the Reaper thought, "It's dark." Raising her head, she saw a chess piece above her. Someone said, "Teleport." Shrouded in blue light, the Reaper found herself next to the hooded man. She thanked him, but he remained silent. Turning around, she saw the main character. She called out to him and he turned around. The Reaper asked if he knew how to clear this room, because he walked through all the rooms that were up to that moment, as if he knew in advance how to act. Baphomet frowned and she said that if they delayed, they would get tired and die. The main character said what he said, and the strategy for clearing this room is terribly boring, and therefore uninteresting. He said that it is necessary to evade the chess pieces and survive until two invisible players finish their game. And if at least one survives, the monster of this room will reveal its appearance. He said that once the players catch the monster, the room will be cleared. He said that this place is very similar to a trap map. The hand raised the chess piece above his head. Looking up, Baphomet asked whether it was necessary to deliberately wait the entire game until its end. Clenching his hand into a fist, he raised it. Having smashed a chess piece, he shouted that he needed to think more simply. The invisible player's hand was shaking. The girl with brown hair clenched her teeth in amazement. The hooded man opened his mouth. The main character shouted with a smile that they would simply destroy everything. He said when all the pieces disappear and the game is forcibly stopped, the owner of this room will be so angry that he will show himself to them. The Reaper turned pale and opened her mouth in shock. Baphomet shouted that this was the strategy for clearing this room. The Reaper thought what a rude and ignorant way this was. The system said that this method is also quite good. The girl with brown hair raised her leg up. With a kick, she broke the black chess piece. She shouted to Pagan to keep up with her. Glowing blue threads flashed in the air. Having lifted the chess piece with threads, the Reaper thought that destroying the pieces would be easier than ever. Gritting her teeth, she raised her arms above her head. Swinging her arms, she broke the pawn in half and thought that this action itself required a lot of mana and stamina. Looking at one of the chess pieces, she thought that, however, he didn't care. The main character cut the chess piece in half. Having finished with one figure, he immediately swung his axe at another. A hooded man stood motionless. Baphomet was surrounded by stone fragments. The hooded man didn't move at all. The main character kicked with force. Nothing was visible under the hood. Baphomet stood among the rubble of destroyed chess pieces. Smirking, he told the monster to come out. Under the hood was an inhuman face. Huge roots appeared from the ground, rising upward. They surrounded the main character. He turned his head sharply. He jumped and the stone hand hit the ground. Another hand tried to grab him. Baphomet jumped back and dodged the grab. He asked where he was. Two hands waved over the board. He said at least this board isn't crowded with people. Huge ones hit the ground, and the main character dodged each one. While twirling his axes, he said that he felt a strange presence outside the chessboard. Holding onto the chains, he began to quickly spin the axes. Throwing the axe forward, Baphomet asked if he was there. The axe disappeared into the darkness. The green light illuminated the darkness, revealing the axe to be embedded in the wooden roots. The monster, with wooden roots coming out from under his clothes, called him a stupid man. He asked how dare he make a mess on his property. He shouted that he would make him pay for this. Baphomet said with a grin that he had been waiting for this. A red dialogue box indicated that Baphomet's skill had been activated. Night lights illuminated the city. Someone thanked Echidna for her work. Echidna turned around. The girl with black hair thanked her for coming to this interview at such a late hour, because the matter was urgent, and thanks to her assistance everything went well. Echidna asked if they were so grateful, did they understand what she asked in return. The girl said that he would select only the best and most profitable information about the Ark Guild and publish only that. Echidna said with a smile that she trusted her completely. The girl with ashen hair said that the Huntress Shining just called her. Echidna said that she was in the maze tower. She asked if she had completed the cleanup. She picked up the phone. The Shining One said about the guy who then fell into the water at the pool party. She said he was part of their operation to clear the maze tower. The Echidna opened her eyes in amazement. The main character swung his axe. The axe cut the wooden monster in half. Then another one. Baphomet continues to chop one monster after another into pieces. The dialogue box says, Baphomet skill activated, adrenaline. This skill is activated automatically when the excitement scale increases in battle. All characteristics increase by 30%. The main character stood with axes in front of a wooden monster. The monster pointed his hand forward. The roots surrounded Baphomet, and the monster thought that he felt as if he had become even stronger than he was a moment before. He opened his eyes in amazement. The red dialogue boxes say, target. When fighting the specified target, damage taken is reduced by 50%. And attack power is additionally increased by 30%. Cutting the roots with axes, the main character approached the enemy. The monster asked if he had become even stronger. He asked what kind of magic he used. Baphomet approached him with an evil grin. The axe flew towards the monster. It pierced his shoulder and he screamed in pain. The main character, holding the chain with his hand, said that the tree burns well. Shrouded in a murderous aura, he told him to consider this to be an effectiveness test. Echidna shouted that he should not be allowed to meet Valkyrie. The Radiant One said that even Valkyrie herself would not want to deal with someone who was tearing out her hair. Sighing, Echidna said that it seemed like she really didn't know. She asked what she thought was the likelihood of an S-rank hunter with superhuman strength to pass out after falling into the water. Echidna categorically said that the probability is 0. The red dialogue boxes say, Raven Apostle Special Skill. Raven, with his eyes closed, put his hand on his sword. Opening his eyes, glowing blue, he said, gigantic. Baphomet, opening his glowing red eye, said, flash. The chain in his hand was engulfed in a stream of flame. Looking at the approaching flames, the monster exclaimed in amazement. The flames were approaching his face. There was a strong explosion. The main character laughed among the flames. The Reaper smiled awkwardly. With his hands on his hips, Baphomet laughed loudly. He shouted that this was a battle that deserved to be called a battle. He shouted to the fire to burn earlier, so that what had accumulated in it would splash out in one moment. The system said that he is now behaving really inappropriately. The main character, standing in front of the flame, told the system to shut up because he was looking at the fire. Reaper thought that she had heard that among the hunters there are fanatics of fighting. But after seeing such a hunter in person, she realized that she would never want to get involved with such a freak. Baphomet exclaimed that he had completely forgotten to take sweet potatoes with him, and he wanted to eat them straight from the fire. The Reaper looked at him thoughtfully. She wondered if he wasn't a warrior class, but why did he use magic? She thought maybe he could use the skills of both classes. She thought that among the battle mages she knew, only Raven could use and demonstrate such power. The main character suddenly noticed something. The ground under their feet began to shake. The floor began to become covered with cracks. They cried out that the floor was collapsing and the place remained bad until the very end. Pointing to the light, Reaper yelled to run because it looked like there was an exit. Pagan ran after them. Suddenly the floor gave way under his feet. With his eyes wide open, he began to fall. He dropped Secretary Kan's hand. Pagan looked down sharply. He extended his hand after the falling hand. At that moment, he fell off the piece of ground he was standing on. Everyone turned around sharply. The main character ran, swinging his chain. He caught Pagan's hand. Holding onto the chain with his hand, he did not allow it to fall. Baphomet calmly looked down. Echidna asked how much time had passed since Valkyrie entered the maze tower. The Radiant One said that she came right after she cleared the other tower, and about an hour and a half had already passed. Echidna said that with Valkyrie's skills, she should have already reached the highest class, and if that hunter had safely reached the very last floor, then they would have already met. Baphomet said about the eyes expressing the loss of desire for battle. Looking down at Pagan, he said no matter how safely he got out of here, he would still die in the next tower, unable to fight properly. Echidna, nervously chewing her nail, said that they needed to take appropriate measures. The protagonist said that losing the will to fight disqualifies him as a warrior. Echidna asked the editor-in-chief that she had been told that she knew a lot of reporters. Baphomet held Pagan's hand. Echidna asked with a smile if she could introduce her to these reporters. Releasing Pagan's hand, the protagonist said that perhaps dying now would be even better for him. A blow sounded. The main character was hanging from a cliff. He looked up. He jumped aside. Long blonde hair fluttered in the air. Valkyrie, holding Pagan in her hands, landed in front of him. She said that he turns out to be a bad person. Baphomet frowned at her. Straightening up, Valkyrie said with a smile that she felt he needed to be tamed. Mischievously, sweating nervously, with a smile she asked to introduce her to a reporter who could prevent the spread of scandals. The woman in the black dress said, the most frequently asked question. She asked what the ideal type for a Valkyrie was. Valkyrie, saying that she did not know, suggested, a good conversationalist. She said that she doesn't care much about appearance. She remembered how, when the main character was drowning, she paid attention to him. Looking at his face, Valkyrie thought that he was absolutely her type. They surfaced. Valkyrie stood in front of the unconscious Baphomet. Echidna asked if everything was okay. Valkyrie, exclaiming about sudden anemia, fell to the floor. The Echidna clenched her teeth in irritation, turning pale. This was Valkyrie's plan. She thought, if I fall gracefully to the floor, then, looking at the body that I worked so hard on, no man will resist and fall in love with me. However, this plan failed due to Echidna's quick intervention. Listening to her conversation with Baphomet, she irritably wondered what she was doing, and what hair she was even talking about with him. She observed the situation and wanted to pretend that she was beginning to come to her senses, but she fell asleep. People, noticing Valkyrie, exclaimed that it was her. She smiled and they exclaimed that this was the first time they had seen her live and she was their idol. Valkyrie told the protagonist what a coincidence it was to see him here. After apologizing for the incident, she asked if he had a lot of difficulties because of it. She asked if he, Baphomet, had dealt with the monster of the tower. Valkyrie said with a smile that his will and fearlessness are no joke. The main character looked at her indifferently. Opening her eyes, Valkyrie asked what the worst thing he had ever done in his life was, and if it was what he had just done. Baphomet didn't answer. Laughing, Valkyrie said that it seemed like her ideal type was the bad guys after all. The main character didn't even move. Valkyrie thought she felt like she was talking to herself. She said he didn't seem to remember who she was. Baphomet asked who it was. Turning pale, Valkyrie exclaimed that she had made such a strong impression, and now he did not remember her. Two girls approached her from behind, and the girl with dark hair told her to differentiate between what was private and what could be seen by everyone. She said the other hunters were watching her with envy. Valkyrie, turning to the hunters, introduced herself and said that everyone had overcome great difficulties to get here. She said that now they will enter the room with the boss of this tower and clear it. She said that the Ark Guild plans to deal with the boss of the maze tower, so the others do not need to prepare for battle. But in just a second, any variable in their plan can change, so they urged them to prepare personal protective equipment. Turning to the girl with dark hair, she called for checking the state of readiness of each group. The girl said that groups A and B were fine, except for the hunter who suffered minor injuries. Valkyrie asked about Group C. The brown-haired girl looked down. She said that the hunter Saul from the Nebula Guild died. Valkyrie asked if everyone was ready. She said they were opening the doors. Huge doors began to open. A strong wind blew from the doors that opened. A girl with dark hair covered her face with her hand. She opened her eyes wide, frowning. Someone shouted for everyone to lie down on the floor. Dark energy quickly flew over the heads of the hunters. The guys turned around at a strong explosion. Someone said that they finally got here. The monster, sitting on the throne, said that he did not want to stain his sword with blood again. Commander Charon was dressed in black armor and his eyes glowed red. He asked which of them would become his opponent. Looking at the girl, who covered her mouth with her hand in shock, he asked, "Maybe you." Looking at the guy in the coat, he asked if it was the one next to him. Finally, he looked at the main character. Baphomet looked at him with red eyes. Commander Charon, noticing his gaze, was silent for a while. He said that there was a strange guy among them. His sword glowed with a red aura and was shrouded in energy. He said that, one way or another, it was better to separate them. Dark energy hit next to the guy. The same energy struck between the guy and the girl. The girl with dark hair dodged the energy blasts. She shouted to Valkyrie what would happen if she took risks. Valkyrie replied, "She knows." Dark energy was approaching the main character. He said it was inventive. Valkyrie, being in front of him, reflected the energy. The main character looked at her irritably. Turning around, Valkyrie said that this was a chance to get his attention. As she charged, she told him to watch carefully and remember who she was. Commander Charon exclaimed that she is very hot-tempered and hasty, because he also chooses the enemy. Valkyrie said that there was no need to choose anymore. She activated the Vanadi's favor skill. The blue dialogue boxes say, "Activate Valkyrie's special skill." A green barrier surrounded people around, including the main character. While the Vanadi's protection skill is active, a barrier is created for all nearby allies against attacks that cause physical and magical damage. Valkyrie waved green energy. She found herself dressed in golden armor. She said that his opponent is her. The dialogue box says, "Vanadi's Auspices, Stage 1. For 300 seconds, all characteristics increase by 30%. Valkyrie attacked the enemy with green energy. The dialogue box says, "For 300 seconds, all skill effects are increased by 30%. Commander Charon attacked with dark energy. Their energies were getting closer to each other. The dialogue box says, "Increase immunity to all damage by 30%. They clashed in attack. Green energy surrounded Valkyrie's spear. She moved forward in leaps, striking with her spear. Green energy flashed between them. The impact shattered the Charon commander's shoulder armor. The dark energy was approaching Valkyrie, and he shouted about how impudent it was. Valkyrie jumped from her spot, doing a somersault in the air. She and a multitude of lines of green energy hung in the air above the monster. Valkyrie pointed downwards. Spears of green energy fell down, sparkling with bright flashes. Commander Charon exclaimed in pain. Valkyrie silently watched what was happening. The guy asked about her being S-rank. He said, "No matter how epic rank a boss is, to an S-rank hunter, it will still be like a normal boss." Baphomet looked ahead silently. He wondered what was going on there. Commander Charon waved dark energy. He was approaching Valkyrie. Valkyrie was behind him. Commander Charon turned around sharply, his red eyes flashing. He swung his sword. A small particle of green energy flashed. Having stabbed him with a spear, Valkyrie found herself behind him. The helmet on Commander Charon's head shattered into pieces, revealing his long hair. White particles floated in the air in front of Valkyrie's face. The blue dialogue box says, "You killed the commander of the Charon Knights." Green energy surrounded Valkyrie as she returned to the others. She returned to her normal form, and the girls ran up to her, exclaiming that it was perfect, and they didn't expect anything else from her. Valkyrie rubbed her chin in puzzlement and looked around. Someone asked why an epic rank tower boss was so weak, so much so that there was no need to even use a weapon. Someone suggested that the Valkyrie simply became stronger. Another person said no, it's just that the recently cleared tower was also epic, and that's probably the reason. Another person asked if it was strange because the tower had been cleared, but the message about the completion of the clearing never appeared. Something rose in Commander Charon's back. The main character looked sharply in his direction. Valkyrie's eyes widened. The monster rose above the ground, surrounded by a whirlwind of blue energy. The girl looked in amazement at the flash of blue energy. The flow of energy knocked people off their feet. Someone asked what it was, and the main character covered his face with his hands. The girl with dark hair exclaimed that the boss had definitely been killed. Valkyrie asked if this boss was a fake. Something rose above Charon's corpse. Looking at the face of the dead boss, the girl asked why he had to face death like that instead of her. Tears streamed down her face and she asked why. The girl had white hair and blue eyes, and she asked why they wouldn't leave them alone. Baphomet said that this is the real boss. A huge blue magic circle surrounded them in the air. Magic circles began to appear above people. Valkyrie looked up and clenched her teeth. Running past the main character, the Reaper shouted to everyone to stay away from the magic circle. She shouted that she had been waiting for this moment. The girl with brown hair exclaimed in amazement. Gritting her teeth, the Reaper extended her hand forward. She extended her hand to the magic circle, from which a bright light shone on her. Suddenly she disappeared, leaving behind a silhouette of blue particles. Valkyrie opened her mouth in amazement. Stretching out her hand to the main character, she shouted to him to step aside. The Baphomet in front of him also disappeared, leaving behind a blue silhouette. Valkyrie looked at the blue particles scattering in the air in shock. Something sparkled in the darkness. A drop fell on the face of the Reaper, who was lying on the ground. Opening her eyes, she immediately stood up and looked around. In front of her was a huge white structure with statues. Joyfully opening her mouth and eyes, she exclaimed that she had succeeded. Jumping up, she stepped on Baphomet lying on the ground and exclaimed that it was worth the huge amount of money spent on buying information. She noticed a voice coming from under her feet. The main character, gritting his teeth, irritably told her to get off. Jumping off him, the Reaper asked why he was there. Pagan stood up, clutching his head with his hand. He asked what place this was. Looking at him, the priestess turned pale. She screamed loudly. After some time she apologized. She said with a sad face that the magic of teleportation affected not only her, but also transported 2 other people who were next to her at that moment, and as an apology she would give them all the loot that was intended for her from this hunt. Baphomet said he didn't care. He asked what place this was. The Reaper said that this is the Temple of the Labyrinth, a space where they move only when the real boss appears. The main character said that, judging by the fact that she was aware of the existence of this space, she had some kind of personal goal for participating in the clearing of this tower. He asked if there were any rare treasures hidden here. Raising her index finger, Reaper said no, and there was something much more valuable here. She said with a smile that this place is the temple itself. She said that all the information about monsters and demons is hidden here, and from the architectural design and structure you can find out what climate they lived in, what kind of culture they had. She said that they could see how they, like themselves, stood in awe of God and speculated on the subject of his existence. The Reaper said that in other words, this is a place where one can learn about the history of monsters and demons. Baphomet asked that she participated in clearing the tower just for this, risking her life. The Reaper said yes, because it is an incredible literary value, and finding a tower with so much information is like getting a star from the sky. She said that she would collect all this valuable information together and later use it in her own book, which she was writing. And it would definitely become a bestseller. She would become known in the scientific world as a talented archaeologist. Baphomet, looking at her shining face, said that it was very romantic. He said maybe he's wrong, but this temple is just made to look real, and the monsters only have an attitude. The Reaper looked at him. The main character said that in the heads of demons there is only one simple command: to kill a person. The Reaper said that this is true if you look at it from their point of view, but if you look at it from the monster's point of view, they are simply responding to them by protecting their home. Baphomet asked what she knew about this. The Reaper asked if he wanted to look at these frescoes. She said there is a biography displayed here. She said that perhaps we are talking about the eye of this tower, that is, the boss of the Labyrinth Tower. Nearby you can see letters similar to an ancient language. She said that if you try to connect and interpret the inscriptions, it turns out that in the beautiful and majestic kingdom of Bellatrix, there lived an outstanding queen named Reincarnated. The Reaper said that, with a more beautiful face than any woman, she wielded the most powerful spells better than any other magician. The main character, remembering the woman with blue eyes, wondered if it was about that boss. The Reaper said that the rumor of her superiority spread to other kingdoms. Reincarnated's influence was so great that even the inhabitants of neighboring kingdoms wanted to serve her. However, as we know, ideal people tend to have many enemies. She said that the neighboring kingdoms were jealous of the Bellatrix kingdom, which had such a prominent queen, so they eventually declared war on it. For the protection of the king, Charon, the eldest son of the previous king and the eldest brother of the current queen, completely surrendered to black magic. Beetlejuice, the first royal magician, gave his body to the spirit of the tree as payment for powerful magic. Reincarnated was desperate, wanting only the prosperity of the kingdom and peace for its inhabitants, the people who followed her, the people who admired and respected her. Reincarnated could not watch how they all became victims of this war. Then she created a gigantic fortress that no one could approach. Baphomet, folding his hands on his chest, said that this place was called the Labyrinth Tower. The Reaper continued reading. Pagan, hitting the wall in front of her, asked what she was reading so enthusiastically. He shouted that because of this unbearable boss who created this tower, Secretary Can died. The Reaper, turning pale, asked what he was doing. She said if he spoils or destroys anything in the temple, no one knows what might happen. The main character suddenly opened his eyes. He raised his head up. A blue light shone on him, and he clenched his teeth and said, "It has already happened." Looking at the column of blue energy, he said that it seemed like someone had awakened. The ground glowed under their feet. The main character looked forward, frowning. Reaper and Pagan's eyes widened in fear. A man in a white robe appeared from the magic circle. A bright light shone on his mask. The red dialogue box had a mission description: defeat Rizal, the boss of the Maze Tower. Little Pagan stood with his fists clenched. His gaze was downward. The adult Pagan stood, gritting his teeth, and thought why he was always to blame. Rizal, shrouded in bright light, towered above them, floating in the air. The Reaper, looking at the dialogue box, exclaimed that they were being offered to deal with the boss, but this was impossible. Baphomet asked if she had expected such a situation. The Reaper said that she had planned from the very beginning to leave here as soon as she finished exploring the temple. Showing the device, she said, using this teleport. Looking at Rizal, she said that now she can't use it because teleport can't be used in the boss room. The mask's eyes glowed blue. The Reaper said that this is now the boss's room. A sphere of energy gathered in Rizal's palm, and she said that she gave them a chance, but they invaded this place, sacred territory. She said that she was unable to watch indifferently, so they would punish her. A bright light enveloped her, and the air swirled around her. The main character said that this boss is limited, because he just broke some kind of wall. The Reaper said that the last sentence said that by becoming the god of the Maze Tower, she became their savior. Rizal pointed her hand at them, and the Reaper asked which god would like to see the temple built to praise him destroyed. They shouted to move aside. Baphomet, ignoring her, said that he had always wondered why the beings called gods were so stingy and petty. The Reaper, covering her face with her hands, exclaimed in incomprehension. The girl behind his system opened her eyes in amazement. The main character said with a grin that it was boring. The girl with white hair grinned back. The Reaper screamed loudly, and the light became brighter and brighter, engulfing them. A burning flame could be seen in the darkness. The flames were everywhere. The fire was burning. Baphomet slowly opened his eyes. He held a bloody woman in his arms and stood amid raging flames. He looked at the girl in his arms in bewilderment. With his eyes wide open, he wondered what kind of situation this was. The hooded man asked if he was sorry. It was Rizal, and she said that this memory played out the thing he regrets most in his life, and he killed one of the people dear to him with his own hands. The main character opened his mouth in amazement, and Rizal said that he did not want this. She asked that he had no other choice. Baphomet asked if she was saying that he killed her. Rizal said she understands why he denies it. Looking at him, she said that she would help him and she could bring him back to correct the mistake he had made. Baphomet asked, "Return it back." Rizal said yes, and he will start alive. The main character repeated again. Turning around, he asked with an unpleasant grin, "What if I don't want to?" The scene of the raging fire is cracked. It shattered into pieces like glass, and Rizal covered her face with her hands. Baphomet said that this was expected. He asked if it was an illusion. He said with a smirk that she should have chosen her target correctly. He asked if she thought such nonsense would work on him. After apologizing, the main character said that these were not his memories. He asked if she was interested in how he became human. He remembered the words of the girl with white hair that she also took this body. Baphomet said with a grin that these memories belonged to the original owner of the body. Rizal was enveloped in a blue light and said that her proposal to start over was a very boring thing. The light engulfed her silhouette, and he said he didn't need a second chance. Jumping into the attack, the main character said that, in any case, she was on time, because he was just getting bored. He said with a crazy smile that they would start. The Reaper, exclaiming, raised her palm. Apologizing, she closed her eyes and slapped him in the face. Baphomet tried to understand why he was in so much pain. The Reaper asked if he was okay. She said she didn't know if he was sleeping. The main character asked what happened and where they were. The Reaper said that they were all mentally attacked by the boss, and she also just came to her senses. She said she didn't know what this place was and it seemed like it had changed. Looking at her, Baphomet wondered if she had regained consciousness before him, and if she had such a strong will. He looked at Pagan. Pagan stood with his cheeks red from the blows. The main character asked if she did it and how many times she hit him. The Reaper said no matter how much she tried to awaken him, it didn't work. She said that she tried all the potions and it was useless, but there was a method that she didn't use. Raising her index finger, she said that her uncle told her that the weakness of men is in that place, and even a strong 2-meter man will fall with one blow. The main character nodded in response. The Reaper said that one blow would be enough. She exclaimed that if she did that, it would look bad. She asked if he would do this because he was also a man, and he would be able to hit the exact spot. Baphomet said he wouldn't do that. The Reaper said what they should do then, and what if he had a mental breakdown. The main character asked if she thought that such a simple physical method would work, because mental magic is not so simple. The Reaper objected that he did the same thing in the chess room and destroyed the pieces. Raising her fist, she said that they could break this too, and then it would all be over. She said if he didn't do it, she'd just do it herself. Baphomet, grabbing her by the pigtail, said that there was no point in this. He said that it is difficult to break a spell of this type unless the magician who cast it removes the spell, and all that remains is to wait for him to wake up himself. Turning around, the Reaper asked what if he never came to his senses. She said it was her fault they were here. Pagan stood still, looking at one point with his mouth open. The light above his head suddenly turned green. He looked around in amazement, finding himself in some kind of space. Turning his head, he asked where he was. He saw 2 people running along the hospital corridor. The doctor said that they did everything possible, but could not save his wife. Looking at little Pagan, someone asked if she died giving birth to this child. He said that his sisters are more talented than him. He asked why, and whether it could be called natural selection. Someone said that he cannot be called an absolute talent. Little Pagan sat on the floor with his face buried in his knees. Someone said he found it. A man with short black hair said his father was looking for him. Pagan asked Kan's secretary if he was as useless a child as that test paper. He asked why there was nothing he was good at, unlike his sisters. He said that he always causes problems. Raising his head, he asked why his mother died because of someone like him. Taking his face in his hands, Secretary Kan told him not to talk like that. He said that there must be things that he would be as good at as his sisters. Raven, shrouded in blue flames, swung his sword. There was a strong blue explosion. People were talking admiringly about the fact that this is the Hunter Raven, who is only 18, and he killed the boss Astarte and cleared the Tower of Fate. They exclaimed that this was the birth of a new hero. Pagan looked at the phone screen while sitting in the car. Opening his mouth in amazement, he thought that he was the same age as him. Looking at Raven's smile, he thought he was amazing. He thought about what would happen if he became like this hunter. The secretary called out to him and Pagan looked at his hand. The chess piece fell on him, crushing Secretary Kan to death. Pagan looked at this in horror and shouted his name. Pagan grabbed him by the throat, cursing. Pagan, the soul of his other self, said that because of him and his selfishness, Secretary Kan died. He said that if it weren't for him, then my mother would be alive. He said that Secretary Kan would also be alive. He said that you, the 2 hunters who would die because of him, would also still be alive. After releasing him, Pagan said that he should not have been born to begin with. Rizel stood behind him and he cupped his face and said if he hadn't been born this wouldn't have happened. Rizel said that he was just like her, and because of her existence, her servants and people suffered a senseless death. Reaching out her hand to him, she said that she would help him and she could bring him back so that he could correct the mistake he had made. Rizel said with a smile that he would be born again. Pagan found himself surrounded by blue space with white particles. His eyes glowed blue and the veins on his face bulged. Black energy swirled around him, and he was imprisoned in a dark sphere. The Reaper asked in amazement what was happening. Pagan shouted loudly. A bright light comes from his eyes. Reaper and Baphomet's pupils shrank. There was an explosion of black energy and they jumped to the side. The Reaper opened her mouth in amazement, looking at the source of the blue light. A black silhouette stood in front of them. His hands seemed to be weapons themselves, and blue light came from the cracks in his black body. The Reaper wondered what it was. Pagan waved his black hand upward. He hit with force, throwing the Reaper and the main character aside. The Reaper looked up as she landed on the floor. Pagan immediately jumped to attack her. The main character swung a chain with an axe. The chain wrapped around the monster's hand. Baphomet jumped to attack him, raising his hand. With a cool look, he swung his weapon. Waving her arms, she exchanged blows. Baphomet silently opened his eyes wide. He bent his legs, standing on the floor. Pushing off the ground, he jumped forward. He charged again, and they exchanged blows in irritation. The air swirled around them. Having landed on the ground, the main character ducked down. Pagan, landing on the ground opposite him, raised his weapon. The main character grinned. He began to laugh loudly, and the Reaper looked at him in amazement. Baphomet asked if he could defeat him with his current powers. Looking at the enemy, he said that it was easy to dodge his blows, but his strength would run out so quickly, and he temporarily strengthened his abilities with magic. He said they would only win if they acted together. The Reaper said that then they could stop him only by killing him. The main character said that if killing would stop him, then they should kill him. The axe disappeared from his hands and a red dialogue box indicated that the use of the weapon had been discontinued. The Reaper said that, as he said, the spell will wear off only if another magician removes it. But, by a sad coincidence, the magician who enchanted him is the boss of this tower, which means that only the one who owns magic can remove the spell boss level of this tower or higher. After dodging the attack, she asked if he could do it. Baphomet said no, and his skills are nowhere near that level. The Reaper asked what to do then, and if that meant there was no other way but to kill him. She asked if they caught the boss, wouldn't the imposition be lifted? The main character said that they could only talk about it when they caught the boss. He asked where this boss is now. The Reaper said there really was no other way. Baphomet said there is one way. As he somersaulted in the air, he said that, like her, he had his own personal reason for being in the tower. Raising his index finger, he said that there was one ability left that he had never tested. While moving back from the attacks, he said that the first condition for activating this ability is to be on the very top floor of the tower. Dodging again, the main character said that the second activation condition is confrontation with an enemy he cannot defeat. Pagan's blade was above his head, and he spoke about the third condition. Appearing before the Reaper, Baphomet said that this condition would have to be fulfilled by him. He spoke the third condition. The Reaper's eyes widened in shock. She exclaimed that this could not be. She asked if he was asking her to do this and what if something went wrong. Pagan ran to attack, and the main character said that she dreams of becoming famous as an archaeologist, so there is no point in her dying here. The Reaper wanted to object. Baphomet looked at her with a gloomy look and said that he could just kill him and not look for other ways. He said that if he gathered all his strength, he could do it. He said that not only had she kidnapped him, but now she had the chance to contribute to his death, and it would be a worthwhile spectacle. The Reaper remained silent, eyes wide. Baphomet had a smirk on his face. Pagan swung his black blade. The Reapers clenched their teeth in irritation and cursed. With a wave of her hand, she cut his chest. He fell to the ground under Pagan, who jumped to attack. His blade was approaching the protagonist's throat. Smiling, Baphomet activated his ability, Turn Back Time. Strong red energy surrounded him. The Reaper shielded herself from the bright red light with her hands. The first condition for using the ability, the highest floor of the tower, has been met. The second condition for using the ability, facing an enemy he cannot defeat, is met. The third condition for using the ability, receiving critical damage from the hunter, has been met. Since the body data has been destroyed, a new body structure is created that will match the power. The Reaper asked if he was sure he was okay. The system has started counting down. Baphomet opened his red eyes. The system counted to 1, and the Reaper called out to the main character. Baphomet said that it would be better for her not to know anything. He hit her neck with his hand. The Reaper fainted and her eyes rolled back into her head. She fell to the floor. The main character pointed his finger at Pagan. He said he had business with him. Pagan looked back at him. Leaping to attack, he swung his weapon. Something black quickly flashed in the air. Pagan's hand was cut off and lay in Baphomet's hand. Turning to the enemy, the main character smiled evilly. The monster turned around in fear. The main character with horns on his head said that he would take his hand as payment for saving him. The red dialogue boxes say, Ability successfully activated. The demon god Baphomet's action will continue until the tower is cleared. Someone, gritting his teeth, said that this could not be. He asked how he got his powers back. Baphomet looked at his palm in amazement. He said with a smile that he had not felt this full of energy throughout his body for a long time, and his strength returned. He said that, however, he could only maintain this skill in the tower. The reuse time was only 31,536,000 seconds, and he could not yet use the skills he had mastered as a human. The main character said dissatisfiedly that this was a stingy ability. Turning to the red chain monster, he told him not to move, since it had been quite a while since he last used this ability, so if something went wrong, he could die. Approaching him, Baphomet, rubbing his chin, said that now he could clearly see the chaotic weaving of the spell. He said that if so, it would be better to entrust this matter to him. The dark demonic silhouette tensed. The main character raised his palm up. Surrounded by red chains, he said, "Come out." He and the monster stood in silence and nothing happened. Baphomet angrily asked if he dared to disobey him. The monster with big teeth screamed loudly. He swore loudly. Baphomet chuckled and the monster said that he had just freed himself, but he reappeared. The main character told the former boss of the Abyss Tower, Beelzebub, that they had not seen each other for a long time. The well-known boss of the Abyssal Tower was Baphomet. However, the original boss of the Abyss Tower, an extremely lucky creature with a golden spoon in its mouth, was Beelzebub. Until that day came, Beelzebub sat with his face in his palm. Baphomet, with a huge bag on his back, breathing heavily, said that he had finally arrived. He asked why he lived so high. He said it was very difficult to get up here. He asked if he was the boss of Beelzebub. Beelzebub asked who he was. He asked how such worm got here, and was it not gatekeeper demon number 18 from the first floor? Baphomet, a low-level poor man crawling in the mud. Baphomet said that he defeated the others to get here. The sword, tearing the bag, fell out of it. Catching the sword by the blade, Baphomet said that he almost dropped it again. The huge bag turned over his head and forward. Beelzebub watched him silently. He said he was an idiot. He told him not to waste his time and quickly leave here. Baphomet told him to choose, and he opened his eyes. He told him to choose which weapon he wanted to die from. Many axes, swords, and other weapons lay on the ground in front of him. The result of this battle was the victory of Baphomet. Beelzebub shouted in fear that he could not be killed. Baphomet asked why. Beelzebub said that if he killed him, this tower would collapse and then he would die too. He said that no matter how much stronger he was, the tower still considered him the boss. Beelzebub persuaded Baphomet. He said that he had a good idea, he would become the boss instead of him, and if the tower recognized him, then he could kill him. Raising his finger, he said that in the meantime, he would coexist here with him, be quiet and obedient, and also help him in difficult times. He asked if he would like to study magic, since he was familiar with this field. After this, Baphomet, being killed by Raven, thought that as a result of this he would disappear. The main character told Beelzebub to remove the spell from Pagan. Beelzebub asked why he was helping such an insignificant human being. Baphomet asked if he dared to resist him. Beelzebub said no. He thought this guy was very durable. A huge hand appeared from the red magic circle. Beelzebub thoughtfully asked about the spell. The main character asked if he could film it. Beelzebub said that he is the great magician Beelzebub, and for him there is no spell in this world that he cannot remove. He said he didn't know who cast the spell, but he did a good job. Stretching out his hand, he said that it would be enough to destroy it with his witchcraft. A bright light shone in the stone, bright room. Rizel floated in the air with her arms outstretched towards the light. She said that no one dare disturb this place. Light sparkled through her fingers and she said they would start over and her kingdom would blossom. A small stone fell on her face. Rizel looked up questioningly. She noticed a crack in the ceiling. She thought, is this possible? Because this space was created by magic, and there simply cannot be a crack here. She wondered if this meant someone had broken her spell. Rizel wondered where in this tower someone could come from who could break her spell. The crack was getting bigger. The ceiling above her collapsed. Rizel looked up in amazement. A shadow hung over her head. Baphomet told Beelzebub that he did a good job. The sole of his boot was getting closer to Rizel's face. The kick sent her flying to the side, raising a cloud of dust. There was a huge dent in the wall behind her, and she was surrounded by rubble. The main character said that now it was his turn. Looking at her with a grin, he said that it was time for a real fight. Rizel asked how. Baphomet smiled and she asked how it happened. Rising from the ground, she asked where he got such strength. Baphomet said that he and she were not close enough to have such conversations. Leaping into the attack, he told her to prepare for battle. Rizel raised her hand and a magic circle appeared in front of her. White magic circles surrounded them. A beam of energy shot out from the magic circle. Baphomet defiantly dodged the energy rays. Running up to Rizel, he said with a grin that he was already there. Rizel put her palm forward in fear. A magic circle appeared between them, and a bright light enveloped the main character. Rizel looked at the main character in fear, continuing to shoot a magic beam at him. Baphomet asked if that was all. Rizel's eyes widened. White magic circles surrounded the main character on all sides. Baphomet said, Ejida. Rizel shot beams of magical energy at him. The cloud of dust was clearing. In front of her was a red magic circle with chains. Red chains pierced her white magic circles. The main character told her to show him something more, otherwise there was simply no point in using this ability. He was surrounded by a red barrier with chains. Smiling, he asked if she understood what he meant. Rizel stared back silently. Hitting her with many chains, Baphomet shouted that he told her to entertain him. There was a magic circle behind Rizel and she turned around. She opened her mouth with tension. The main character, appearing in front of her, raised his fist. He punched, but Rizel dodged and the blow hit the stone wall. Baphomet turned around. Raising his leg, he jumped to attack Rizal from behind. Turning around, Rizal blocked the attack with a white magic circle. The main character continued to say, "More." He hit the ground. The air swirled around Rizal. Baphomet smiled madly. There was an explosion. He kept wanting more. The main character clenched his hand into a fist. He hit Rizal in the face, breaking her mask. When she hit the wall, she left a large dent in it. Surrounded by stone debris, she fell to the floor. Baphomet said with a calm face, "More." Rizal looked back at him. She asked if he was just playing with her. White light enveloped her, and the air swirled around her. The main character asked if she would finally start fighting properly. He said that he should have done this from the very beginning. Otherwise, he was already beginning to be disappointed in her. He shouted Beelzebub's name loudly. Raising his palm, Baphomet told him to give him a weapon from those that he then entrusted to him, something large and strong. Beelzebub said he doesn't have it. Rizal was approaching the main character. Beelzebub said that all his weapons disappeared when the tower collapsed. The main character, lying in the rubble, said in amazement that everything had disappeared. The monster's huge paw stepped onto the stone floor. Behind Rizal stood a huge blue dragon, and Baphomet shouted that this couldn't be happening. Rizal looked down in amazement. The main character, jumping to attack the dragon, shouted that he had put a lot of effort into collecting it. Cursing at Beelzebub, he asked how he even cared about his weapon. Beelzebub asked what he was supposed to do if the tower was built like that, and whether he thought he even needed this care for his weapon. Rizal appeared behind him. Baphomet asked what he just said. A magic circle appeared in front of Rizal's palm. Beelzebub said that after clearing this tower, he still wouldn't see him for a long time. The same magic circle appeared in the dragon's mouth. The main character blocked their attacks with a round red barrier, and Beelzebub asked why he was even asking, since his ability only works while he is in the tower. He added that this ability has a very long cooldown, so the likelihood of them meeting soon is very low. Covering his face with his hands, Baphomet clenched his teeth, and Beelzebub told him to eat well and live in peace. Opening his eyes, the main character called him a vile, impudent fly. The chains cut through the air around him, and Rizal and the dragon fired beams of energy. The impact caused Rizal to lose her balance. Baphomet said to call him whatever you want. He can only use what he borrowed as a weapon. An axe appeared in his hand, which immediately broke in half. A red dialogue box indicated that the weapon was destroyed due to the user's power exceeding a critical threshold. The main character exclaimed that the weapon was destroyed because it couldn't withstand its power, and therefore ordinary weapons are not suitable for him, and he was just trying to have a little fun. A magical space began to surround him, and Rizal asked if the power was just a tool for him to have fun and enjoyment. Shrouded in a blue aura, she said that for her, power was not some child's play. Surrounded by dragons, she said that power does not exist to do such selfish things as he does. Baphomet opened his eyes in amazement. The dragons' mouths fell open, and Rizal said that she had something she had to protect. Her subjects, her people, and her country. A large magic circle appeared in the mouth of the dragon she was standing on. She said that compared to this, the power given to him had no value. The dragons shoot beams of energy at him. Furrowing her brows, Rizal shouted, "For the glory of Bellatrix." Baphomet asked what she even knew. The dragon's head was immediately cut off. Rizal's eyes widened in amazement. Another dragon's head was cut off. The other dragon was immediately beheaded. The main character cut down the dragons one by one. Rizal's mouth fell open in panic. Baphomet approached her and she clenched her teeth. Her blue energy and the protagonist's red energy collided with each other. Rizal pointed her palm towards him. Hanging his head, surrounded by red energy, Baphomet said that he received this power after tens of thousands of deaths. He said that he died at the hands of one man over and over again. He said that he died because his body was divided into parts. The main character said that he died, being crushed to death, leaving no trace. He said that, however, he always came back to life. He asked if she knew what he did after all this. Red chains appeared. 2 red chains pierced the dragon's body, and he said that he beat them to death in the same way. The chains sprayed dragon blood, and he said that he cut their bodies into pieces in exactly the same way. Many red chains enveloped the dragon. Baphomet raised his palm up. He clenched his hand into a fist and said that he smeared them without leaving a trace, just like they did to him. The chains drew blood, and he said that he then went to the very top of the tower. The main character said that he earned this power through his efforts. Blood flowed from Rizal's mouth, and he asked how she dared judge the value of his hard-earned power. Rizal asked who he was. The protagonist with long red hair and black wings pierced her chest with his fist. He said with a smile that he was Baphomet, the former boss of the tower. Number 18 asked what was at the top of the tower. The other monster said that he asked about it last time, and the great boss lives there. Number 18 asked if he too decided whether he could reach the end of the tower. The monster, pointing his finger at him, said that simple determination was not enough, and in order to realize his intention, a huge amount of difficulty had to be overcome. He said that he could only get into the next room of the tower by killing the unnumbered gatekeeper, Baphomet. Looking at him, he asked him at what point he stopped stammering. Number 18 said that this means that now he must kill this gatekeeper. The monster asked if he thought this was possible, because Baphomet was many times stronger than him, and of the two of them, he would most likely die. Number 18 asked if he knew what the advantage of a regular monster was over a boss. Raising his finger, he said that the boss has one life, but while he is alive, they will be resurrected again and again. And in the fight with the gatekeeper, it will be they who die at his hands. No other option is possible. He added that he thinks other monsters don't have this feature. Raising his palm, he said, "Die and rise again, improving each time." He asked if he fought the gatekeeper until his strength surpassed him. Would that mean that then victory would be his? Clenching his hand into a fist, number 18 said that then he would take the name of this gatekeeper, who didn't even have a name. A red dialogue box congratulated Baphomet. Baphomet looked at the blue stone in his hand. The red dialogue box says, "You have defeated the Rizal boss and cleared the maze tower." The main character stood on Rizal's bloody body. He thought, no matter how much he thought about it, it was doubtful that there were many who could handle his strength. Baphomet remembered 6 dark silhouettes. He smiled. Clenching his hands into fists, he thought he would have fun. Hearing the voice, he opened his eyes. Rizal, clutching his leg, spoke in a weak voice about her country and how it could not die. Stepping on her hand, the main character asked that he pulled out the magic core from her, but she was still alive. He said it was a strong attachment. The light shone on the stone statue and he said that it was stupid and she really thought she was the queen of the country that the tower made for fun. Rizal asked about the fun of the tower. Baphomet said yes, and initially there was no country, and she was not a queen. He said that it was just a bunch of monsters to hone the skills of hunters. Rizal's eyes and mouth widened in shock. She said it was impossible. She asked if she was just a monster. She said, "Boss, monster, system setup." The main character opened his eyes wide. Surrounded by white pixels, Rizal said, "Error." Baphomet looked at her in bewilderment, and she said, "Fatal mistake. Delete." There was a flash of bright white light. The main character asked what it was. Turning around, he noticed a man in a brown hood. Baphomet said that it was strange, and in this space the presence of not only him and the boss was felt, but also someone else. The man opened his mouth in fear, and the main character said that he left it because it did not seem dangerous to him. Leaning down, he asked if he was the hunter who was with him at Party C. Baphomet asked why he was hiding. The man's eyes widened in fear, sweating nervously. The white tower rose under the blue sky. Blue particles glowed in the air. Someone's hand appeared. The girls came out of the bright portal. A girl with dark hair asked why the emergency exit had opened, and what the system message was about clearing the tower. Valkyrie opened her eyes wide in amazement. Turning around, they saw another emergency exit. Black hair appeared from the portal. Valkyrie exclaimed in amazement. The main character came out of the portal, holding Pagan and the Reaper in his hands, and in his teeth a man in brown clothes. The windows in the hospital were brightly lit. Someone asked where Sang-hoon is now. Someone replied that he was in the VIP room. A woman with blonde hair asked what condition he was in. A man in a dark suit said there was no danger to life, but one of his arms had been amputated. The woman asked if they wanted to say that they simply left him unattended in the VIP ward without even operating on him. The man said that the patient refused the operation. The woman irritably asked what kind of nonsense this was. Entering the room, she looked inside. Pagan was sitting on the hospital bed. The girls turned to her worriedly, but Sang-hoon told them not to make a fuss. He asked why she came, because everything was fine. Frowning, the girl said that her father wanted to come with her, but she dissuaded him. Opening her eyes, she looked at him. She asked why he refused the operation. Sang-hoon said that Secretary Kan died and all that was left was his arm. The girls opened their mouths in amazement. Sang-hoon said that Secretary Kan said that the tower is still dangerous, but he continues to insist. Hanging his head, he said that he had to die, and he lost his body, only his hand remained. He asked if his lost hand was so important now. There was silence in the hospital room. Sang-hoon said that he can restore his arm later. He asked where the one who almost died because of him, the hunter who saved him. Ma Seong-woong opened his mouth in amazement. The main character stuffed his cheeks with food. Ma Seong-woong asked what he was doing here. Baphomet looked at him in amazement and answered with his mouth full. Ma Seong-woong asked how it was possible to overeat so greedily in such a luxurious VIP room. The main character, with his mouth full, said that he did not receive any injuries, and he was placed here against his will. Ma Xiangwang asked him to swallow first and then speak. Baphomet said maybe it was royal gold, and they suddenly said that he was a hunter who saved their master or something like that, after which they put him in this chamber and asked him what he wanted, to which he replied that he is hungry. Ma Xiangwang asked in amazement if this was the same royal gold group. The main character said that the first impression of this fair-haired guy was bad, but he seems to be a normal guy, and in his experience, there are no bad people among those who give out delicious food for free. He asked how he knew he was here. Ma Xiangwang said that information about the completion of clearing the tower automatically appears in the government system, and people with a service rank like his can immediately check and confirm this information. He said that when he checked the news about the clearing of the maze tower, the person who cleared the tower was listed as Cha Min-woo, and after he learned that he was taken to the hospital, he immediately ran over. Ma Xiangwang leaned forward silently. He asked if he had actually cleared the tower. Baphomet irritably asked what kind of look this was, and whether he again considered him a swindler. Ma Xiangwang said no, and he doesn't suspect him of anything like that. He said that he recognized the rapid growth rate of his skills, but they were still not enough to clear a tower of this level. The main character asked if he needed proof and should show him the trophy, the magic stone he received from the boss, as proof of defeating him. Men in black suits were talking to the woman at the front desk. Ma Xiangwang said that there is more reliable evidence than this. He said, a sign that it was indeed he who cleared the tower. He didn't have time to finish when the door swung open. They turned around and someone said that he was late and someone from the government had already beaten him to it. Baphomet's eyes widened. The guy asked with a smile why someone who had no jurisdiction came here. The main character remembered how he said that it was an honor for him to see a hunter clear the Abyss Tower, and he is the head of the hunter training department. The guy raised his leg up. Stepping on Baphomet's head, he asked if this was really a failure. His face contorted in hostility and he asked if he was just wasting his time. The main character thought it was this damned fraudster. The man with gray hair said that he saw a familiar face. Smiling, he called Baphomet Mr. Fraud and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. The main character frowned furiously. The man said with a smile that he didn't like his reaction, because he missed him so much that he came running here. He said that it was written that an F-rank hunter had cleared the tower. He checked the information, and it turned out to be him. He asked how he cheated this time. He asked what Ma Xiangwang was doing here. The man looked at them and said that he seemed to understand. He asked if he had secretly taken a job with the government as a janitor. Raising his palm, the man said that he understood everything, because even scammers have to do at least some work to eat and survive in this world. He asked if he thought he could handle Ma Xiangwang. He said that he was a much more evil and cruel person than him, killing 7 innocent S-rank hunters at once. Baphomet frowned and looked at him questioningly. Ma Xiangwang punched and the man caught his hand. The girl called out to him. The man asked Ma Xiangwang if he was crazy and didn't realize that if he fought him here, he would just destroy the entire hospital. Ma Xiangwang suggested to Ha Yiwook not to cross the line. Ha Yiwook countered that he was only telling the truth. Ma Xiangwang told him not to waffle about other people's circumstances and to get straight to the point. He asked that the purpose of his visit was to check information about the clearing of the tower, to check whether the hunter Baphomet had really cleared the labyrinth tower. The main character grinned. A red dialogue box appeared in front of him and he said that he would show them what they wanted. An object appeared in his hand and he said that it was proof that he had cleared the tower. He said that this is the proof he received from the tower boss, Rizal. He said that he did not know what it was used for, and assumed that it was for the purpose of presenting it as evidence. Looking Ha Yiwook straight in the eye, Baphomet asked despite this whether he still considered him a fraud. Ha Yiwook looked at him with a hostile gaze. He clenched his teeth. He asked how a loser like him dared to doubt that his judgment about him was wrong. Someone asked if he was the loser here. Ha Yiwook turned around. Sang-hoon entered the room with his sisters, sitting on a wheelchair. The subordinate told Ha Yiwook that these were Royal Gold people. Ha Yiwook smiled and said that this was the future chairman of Royal Gold and current board member, Lee Sang-ah. Lee Sang-ah said with her eyes closed that he was an old friend of theirs. Ha Yiwook said that he was just about to contact them for business planning, and this meeting was an incredible coincidence. He asked what business they were here for. Sang-hoon asked his sister if this person was related to the government. Ha Yiwook looked at him. He said with a smile that he was the youngest son of the chairman of the Royal Gold Group. He asked if he was a hunter and if he had been wounded. Sang-hoon said that he was clearing out the labyrinth tower. Pointing his finger at the main character, he said that this hunter saved him. Looking at Ha Yiwook with hostility, He said that, however, he was rude to his savior. A smile froze on the face of the confused Ha-Yi-wook. Sang-hoon asked his sister what kind of business she was going to do with this government employee. She said that they were going to conduct activities related to the training of hunters, more specifically, to develop a program to find awakened hunters who had not yet been made aware of their existence. Sang-hoon asked with a smile if he could give her advice. He said that he was a man without discernment, unable to properly recognize the hunter who cleared the tower and accusing him of fraud. He asked if it was possible to work with him. Lee Sang-ah said that this is sound advice and he will listen to it and stop cooperating with him. Someone touched Ha-Yi-wook's back with a finger. The girl with the bow asked if he could leave, because they really wanted to talk to this hunter. The other girl, laughing, told him not to be too upset about it, because that was their family motto. She said that the enemy of the one to whom they are indebted is the enemy of the whole family. She told him to leave. Ha-Yi-wook gritted his teeth in irritation and rolled his eyes. Baphomet grinned smugly. Someone wondered what was going on here and they seemed to side with Cha Min-woo. He wondered if Ha-Yi-wook was on the verge of losing control of his facial expression, and whether he should grin at him to make him even more angry. The main character grinned silently. Ha-Yi-wook, sitting in the car, swore angrily and kicked the seat. The driver asked him to calm down, and Ha-Yi-wook irritably asked if he looked calm and why should he endure insults from such a loser. Looking to the side, he asked how this happened, because then he was unawakened and had no power. He asked if maybe his power had awakened. He said he might have missed something. Looking out the window, Ha-Yi-wook said that he rose to this position only because of his hunch, and it told him that he was a complete loser and not worth investing in. He told Jae-hyun to find out more about this guy. Raising his eyes dissatisfied, he said that he felt that there was something on him. Sang-hoon looked down and said thank you. The main character and Ma Seong-woon looked at him in amazement. Sang-hoon, lowering his head, said that, to be honest, he should have left him and walked when he passed out in the tower. Besides, he behaved unfairly towards him, but he still did not abandon him and saved him, for which he is grateful. Baphomet was silent for a moment. He thought that he wanted to leave him then. Looking away, he said, I see. The girl with the bow suggested that Lee Sang-ah leave the two of them alone so that they could talk calmly. Lee Sang-ah agreed and said that it would be better this way. She asked Ma Seong-woon if he was a government employee and if he had time to talk to them about business. Ma Seong-woon scratched his head, smiled awkwardly and said that the department he belongs to uses social security services, so he would be happy to do so, and he is also interested in the business field. They closed the door behind them. Baphomet and Sang-hoon stood silently opposite each other. Running his hand through his hair, the main character said that in fact he was not going to save him, and this happened because of a hunter girl named Reaper. He said that she believed that he had fallen into a trap by falling into song, so she wanted to try to save him with him, so they made a little deal with her and saved him. He added that he decided that in this condition he would no longer be able to climb the tower, so he wanted to get rid of him. Sang-hoon, looking down, was silent for a while and said that he would also be honest with him. He said he didn't care if he died then. He said that, on the contrary, he would have been glad if only the two of them had survived, but he was grateful to him for saving him. Baphomet opened his eyes in amazement. Looking away, he sighed. Squatting down, he said that he did not understand either him or that girl. He asked if it was worth worrying about someone's life, because everyone in the tower is busy trying to survive, and the tower has always been and is a place of death. Baphomet thought that he really didn't understand people. Rising to his feet, he asked if he had anything else he wanted to tell him, since it wasn't like he'd come here just to apologize and be done with it. Sang-hoon said that anyway, he saved him, so he wants to thank him. He said tell him what he wants and he will do whatever he can for him. With his hands folded across his chest, the protagonist said that he felt like he had already repaid him enough, but since he insisted, he would accept his offer. Pointing his finger at the table, he asked if he could eat it all. Sang-hoon said that it belongs to him, so whether he eats it or leaves it doesn't matter. Baphomet spoke about damage to the armor. Sang-hoon said that he was going to hold him accountable for this, because anyway, according to the Reaper, it's a fake. He asked if he really wouldn't ask for anything else, because this wasn't even worth asking for. The main character thought for a while. Looking away, he asked how much money he had. The guy with short hair clenched his teeth. Standing in front of the huge red monster, he thought that his strength was not enough to defeat this monster. The monster opened its mouth, and the guy thought, if only he had a partner. He closed his eyes and thought that if he had been nearby, they would have easily defeated such a monster. Ma Seong-woon appeared next to him and asked with a smile if he needed a partner. He told him not to worry about it. Slapping his palm, he said, a system for selecting partners between hunters. He said, a rental system that provides the necessary equipment. He said, the lowest interest rate that banks envy is only for hunters. Ma Xiangwang said, personal medical system for hunters, working 24 hours a day, depending on the hunter's labor contribution. The hunter's family is also provided with various social benefits. Hunters, forget about all your problems and focus only on hunting monsters. With his hands spread wide, Ma Xiangwang said to entrust the rest to the central management of hunters. The camera took a close-up of his face. This commercial was produced with the support of the central government. The main character frowned and looked at the screen. He said that no matter how many times he watched it, he couldn't get used to it. He said that they filmed such an abomination and then posted it openly without feeling any remorse. Ma Xiangwang said that they tried very hard and there is no need to blame them for it. Baphomet asked if he was working today. Ma Xiangwang, adjusting his glasses, said that he just stopped by to see each other for a short time. He said that originally they only cast this handsome young man who is both an idol and a hunter, but there was a problem with his poor acting. Yu Jun, standing behind him, asked if he was scolding their Jun now. She said that she would make sure that his actions would be known on every corner. Ma Xiangwang apologized and said that he simply misspoke. Yu Jun told Baphomet with a smile that they had not seen each other for a long time. The main character said that she is the hunter who was at career guidance. Han Yu Jun introduced herself and asked how he was doing. Ma Xiangwang said that she will work today. He asked if he had seen the news. Baphomet asked what news. Ma Xiangwang told him to show interest in society at least occasionally, and not just listen to music and take pictures of everything. He said articles about him filled the internet. He showed a phone screen with the headline, "The Whole Truth About Mr. A, who was considered a fraud." He reads several headlines. The public considers him a fraud. The long-awaited revelation of the truth about Mr. A. He asked if he asked for these pagan articles to be released from Royal Gold. Sang-hoon asked about him asking him to write an article. Baphomet said that he has heard that they can control the media with money, and he wants to refute the false rumors that he is a fraud. Sang-hoon said that this doesn't even require money, and they have a whole bunch of reporters who want to make a good impression on their company. The main character added that it would be better if there was no article about him being a hunter who cleared the Labyrinth Tower. Sang-hoon asked why, since it would be useful information for articles disproving his notoriety as a fraud. He asked if this was not a chance for him to become famous as a hunter. Baphomet said that there are those who hunt him, and on the contrary, he should not attract attention until he catches them. Ma Xiangwang said the bait worked and the articles were likely to create buzz in various communities within a few hours. The main character asked why he was so carefree. Because of this he could get a reprimand. Ma Xiangwang said that here they are reprimanded for everything, and besides, it is not his department that will be reprimanded. Waving his hand, he told Han Yu-jun that he was entrusting Baphomet to her, and he had important business to do, so he would go. Han Yu-jun, looking after him, said that he seemed to really care about him, and he rarely worries about anyone like that. Leaning over, she asked why he was so worried about him. Baphomet, turning away, said he doesn't know. Smiling, Han Yu-jun thought that there seemed to be something. Walking down the corridor, she said that she didn't know that there was such a function here too, and she thought that such a thing was only in the hunter training department. She said that taking responsibility for the training department was already very difficult, so their side decided to take on some of the responsibilities and help. She told him not to worry, because the productivity would be identical. A guy in a dark room touched the wall with his hand. He was wearing a lab coat and there was a fly flying around him. Han Yu-jun pressed the button with a smile and said that before testing, she would introduce him to the person who would conduct it. The guy, breathing heavily, waved his hand. The door opened and he fell out, cursing. Han Yu-jun's eyes widened in surprise. The guy opened his mouth and eyes wide. There was a sound of falling. Scratching the back of his head, the guy laughed. Sitting in a chair, he said that he was trying to catch a fly and, although he knew very well that he should not enter the device, thereby causing a critical error. But at the same time he thought that he simply could not accept and leave this situation as it was, because that would be too much. The falling guy was approaching the main character. Baphomet moved aside with a slight movement, and he fell face down on the floor. The guy told the main character through the speakers that he is ruthless, just like Ma Xiangwang said about him. Baphomet said that they gossiped about him behind his back. The guy got down to business with a smile. He said that he is the person in charge of his hunter rank test, Kim Woo-seok. Kim Woo-seok said that usually rank is measured numerically, but there are situations like his where a low-ranking hunter was able to clear the tower. The main character looked up. Kim Woo-seok said that in such special cases, the rank is established after the actual battle. He said the measurement test will be carried out in 3 stages and the test can be abandoned in the middle. He asked with a smile if they would start the test. Baphomet calmly answered, "Let's begin." A blue sphere appeared in front of him and Kim Woo-seok announced the first stage. He told him to touch the blue orb. He said that if he touched a sphere of a different color, 1 point would be deducted. He asked if he was color blind. Baphomet said no. Kim Woo-seok said that they would skip all the hassle of reconfiguring the program. He announced the first stage of the test. The main character was catching blue spheres, and Kim Woo-seok said agility, endurance, reflexes, dynamic visual acuity, and so on. Baphomet raised her head up, and above him was a blue sphere. Kim Woo-seok said that this stage measures his overall physical performance. Pushing off from the ground, the main character jumped high in the air. Kim Woo-seok said that the second stage is called Hell Parade. He said that he himself came up with this name, using data about the tower, which recreates a virtual environment in which monsters can exist. Monsters surrounded Baphomet, and Kim Woo-seok said that this stage tests how many monsters he can defeat in 300 seconds. The bull-headed monster swung its huge paw. They exchanged fist blows. The monster suddenly raised its head. The main character smashed his head with his fist and took on the others, quickly moving between them. The white monster with the head of a wolf was cut in half. Blood gushed from the neck of the bear-headed monster. Blood gushed from the forehead of the orc-like monster. Baphomet killed monsters surrounded by blood. Kim Woo-seok announced the third stage and said that since it is the last stage, his level must match, so there will be a boss in this stage. The main character wiped his face with his hand. The monster's huge paw stepped onto the ground. Kim Woo-seok said that through this battle they will test his destructive power. Baphomet's eyes widened. Kim Woo-seok said that if the situation gets dangerous, he will forcefully stop the test. A huge black dragon stood in front of the main character. He remembered that this was the same monster that defeated him when he first became human. Baphomet lowered his head, and then, grinning, said that they had not seen each other for a long time. He said that he was weak then and absolutely lost to him. The blade in his hand was covered in blood. The dragon's eyes glowed with a yellow light. The main character, frowning resolutely, surrounded by flames, pointed 2 fingers at him and asked if he was ready to die.